Hello, it's your girl Tiffany, Madam Luscious Black Beauty, your poetic psychic Pisces, High Priestess, aka the light that shines like a diamond, also known as your modern day nun, one who isn't within a coven, a convent, or a covenant. I do thank you all for listening and for watching on today. If you would be so kind to like, share, and subscribe, it would be greatly, greatly appreciated. Today is going to be a story review for my most recent story time that I have created with yours truly, Poetic Psychic Pisces, High Priestess, which is myself. As you all know, my story times is original work created by myself that I come on and share and recite for you. Okay? Today's story time review is entitled A Meal to Die For. A group of randomly selected individuals invited to an island resort hosted by very wealthy people in power, whom are a family who runs, owns, rule, and control a private exotic island in which they reside in an enormous mansion. That of which the family made available to celebrities, elites, very important people in power, and the public, or more so rather, a limited group of lucky drawn persons invited to a retreat once a year during the summer months. Besides the wealthy and powerful family mansion on the island, there was also a very luxurious resort and spa for the guests, which include all the amenities anyone could possibly ever imagine. The island included access to a beautiful ocean view, as well as the resort was equipped with a full-service spa and massage parlor, swimming pools, hot tubs and jacuzzis, 7 on-site concerts, gym, yoga and meditation studio, zen garden, sauna and steam rooms, gift shops, cinema theater, bar, elegant dining, dance club, amusement park, and so much more to enjoy. The summer retreat was 2 weeks in each of the summer months from June to August, which different guests were invited each month. Nevertheless, the islanders were promised the time of their lives and the opportunity to fulfill their heart's desires for free of charge. But most importantly, the guests were served the most exquisite meals to die for, that of which they enjoyed daily in the company of their very generous host. The rest of their time on the island was set aside to do whatever they so chose. After all, the theme for this retreat, as far as the guests knew, was for them to find the love of their life and or to fulfill their any and every heart's desire. Or so they thought. 10 single men and 10 single women stranded in the middle of beautiful nowhere, yet somewhere they'll never forget for as long as they live. Welcome to Fancy Feast Island and Resort. Side note. The island's guests are unaware they will be secretly recorded during their stay for a underground reality show aired on the dark web, which makes millions to billions of dollars yearly. Little do they know their lives are in danger as the horrific thrills begin. Amongst the endless adventures available to the islanders, beware. No matter the drama that awaits, the fancy feast meals are to die for sure. As always, guys, I always show you all that this is all original work of my own. Every single page, 93 pages in total, that I used to create this story time. Okay, so this is all original work by yours truly, myself, Poetic Psychic Pisces, High Priestess. Okay. Furthermore, I would like to give you all a brief disclaimer. Number one, this story time is going to have some very sensitive topics in it. It's going to have some gruesome areas in it. Okay, and speak about some very taboo things and what have you. Okay, so if you do not like that, you're not interested in that, then this may not be the story time that you would like to listen to. There are plenty of other story times made available on my channel. So if you are viewing this on Tiffany Star 36 Star Ziegler, please visit my main channel at Poetic Psychic Pisces High Priestess. And there's plenty of other content on that channel of all different kinds, from poetic expression moments to other story times that I have done, as well as my missing mystery, murder mystery readings that I have done, as well as general tarot readings that I've done for the collective. So there's plenty of other content on Poetic Psychic Pisces High Priestess. Okay. The second disclaimer I want to give to you all is there are several characters in this story, okay? Each and every character are original characters that I made up myself, okay? This story, neither the characters depict any specific person, place, or thing, okay? This is all original work, okay? However, I will say that in my style of writing, the way I can write about really anything, okay? Most writers, they have a specific topic type of genre that they like writing within, whether it's sci-fi, murder mystery, true crime, love, passion, romance, erotica, you know, facts, fiction, whatever. I can write about, you know, within any of those topics here, okay? This story has just about a little bit of everything all combined into one, which is something that I kind of like doing because I like being set apart from everybody else. I don't want to do what everybody else is doing, okay? This is what makes me different. This is why I'm different, okay? So I also wanted to be known that even though this is an original story, okay, that I created myself, I have mixed both fact and I guess you could say fiction, allegedly. Because, like I said, it's only fiction in the context that I created this story, but what I speak about in this story are actually matter-of-fact things that go on and happen in this world, okay? Truthfully and honestly, okay? So, I have a bunch of different genres jam-packed into one story, from it being horror, horrific, or gruesome, to being passionate, loving, erotica, sexual, to it being, you know, adventurous, fun, creepy, to it be, and you know, it's several different things that's in jam-packed in this story here, okay? As well as it is, you know, like I broke down both fact and fiction, which is how I like to write, especially with my story times. So I just wanted that to be known, guys. But as I said, this story does not necessarily depict any person, place, or thing, allegedly. Like I said, it is original work created by myself, okay, guys? Because I know how people like to, they hear things, they see things, they latch onto things, and they try to make puzzle pieces fit where they don't belong in different things or whatever, which my stories are made to make you think and open your mind, expand your minds anyway, okay? That's how I write. But you know, I always give you all something to make you go, you know, at the end of the day. Okay, guys? So I just wanted to give you all that brief disclaimer. So without any further ado, we are going to get on to today's story time, which is A Meal to Die For on Fancy Feast Island. It was smack dab in the middle of spring. Mayday, Mayday. The quest to hunt for randomly selected lucky guests to Fancy Feast Island began. To make the experience more fulfilling, only one islander was selected from 20 different states, which of course lessened the risk of any residents knowing one another. As expected, it was none other than Mr. Julian Murdoch, the assistant of the very wealthy family, Mr. and Mrs. Rothberg, whom are hosting this spectacular event. Mr. Murdoch's task started off with a statewide jackpot lottery. All 50 states were placed into a crystal bowl, and one by one, 20 states were spontaneously selected. Atlanta, Georgia, Texas, California, Florida, Wyoming, Arizona, New York, New Mexico, Iowa, Washington, D.C., Nevada, Maine, North Carolina, Colorado, Oregon, Montana, Missouri, Louisiana, Tennessee, and Nebraska were the chosen states for the first event, which was scheduled for the first 2 weeks of June. Furthermore, Mr. Murdoch would repeat the same process yet again for July and August events. The randomly selected guests within the U.S. consisted of 10 men, 4 straight, 3 gay, and 3 bisexual, as well as 10 women, 3 straight, 3 bisexual, 2 lesbian, and 3 transgender, of only one of which has been fully transformed, yet the other 2 still had their penis but lived as women. Mr. Murdoch chose each person via their social media accounts. Each quest and guest received a discreet VIP invitation offering a free trip, airfare, and free stay on Fancy Feast Island, including all free amenities, meals, entertainment, and accommodations. A chance to win $10,000, meet the love of their life, or fulfill their greatest desires. That of which each person had 48 hours to reply whether to accept or deny. But as always, there wasn't one person whom declined the offer. So the stage was set. Plans and preparations began to unfold and was put in place by other island staff. However, Mr. Murdoch's taskly chores were not complete just yet. It was now time to contact the VIP guests whom were to accompany the Rothbergs during this event. The VIPs were made up of celebrity entertainers, rich and famous persons in various areas of the industry, politicians, and other government officials, as well as, but not limited to, millionaire, billionaire, and trillionaire elite individuals in power. The VIP list is as follows. Celebrity entertainers: actress Rochella Witherspoon, actor Noriko Robertson, singer Beatrice Knox, rapper Jalen Zaps, model Slavanka Stone, rich and famous industry producer Tiana Perks, director Gio Lucius, film CEO Jonathan Foles, music CEO Lucas Green, host O'Patrick Winhart, politicians Governor Avon Soames, Senator Tadaro Crutch, Mayor Mitch Haynes, Speaker Nandra Asickle, and Hillard Clemens. Other government officials: United States Military General Amos Khan, Congressman Lynch Hillsong, Chief Justice Jean-Rob Ledge, and Mr. President Jodenbar Obushklin. Ministers: Priest Father Evilizas, Minister Pastor Joseph Stein, Minister Bishop Timothy Daniel Jackson, Millionaire, Billionaire, Trillionaire Elite Club, Elancia Musketeer, Fred Benzino, Martis Zuckentyre, Bailey Gateson, Bernadine Arnold, and Ren Buffendier. All of which would lounge at the island's mansion during their stay, whom were all members of a very special club. Once that was done, all of the island servants were briefed on their duties to prepare for the island's guests. There are many servicemen and women on the island at all times, including but not limited to several security guards, island driver, boat captain, butlers, maids, cooks, bakers, waitstaff, trainers for the spa, yoga, meditation studio, a nurse, a doctor, a lifeguard, dance club DJ, gift shop sales clerk, bartender, and guest relations specialist, as well as a production team and camera crew. All of the servants were made available to the island guests for the exception of the production team and camera crew, because the guests had no idea that they would be filmed for the duration of their stay on the island for a secret underground dark web reality show entitled A Meal to Die For on Fancy Feast Island. Nothing was off limits. Every occasion, situation, event, encounter, or interaction was recorded and aired in real time, streaming live directly to the dark web, which paying patrons flocked to with excitement to see what was to happen next. Because everyone was left waiting in such suspense, sitting on the edge of their seats, anxiously eager to see what sneaky, freaky, creepy, or gruesome scene was to come next, it's no surprise that each month's event made millions to billions of dollars in revenue. It's amazing just how many people take pleasure in viewing others in secret while they thrive on the most intimate moments of another. Yet, the guest islanders were forbidden from knowing the true purpose for them being invited to the island. Thus, they blindly accepted their invitations and had no knowledge as to what was to come once they arrived. Nevertheless, Fancy Feast Island is a privately owned, isolated, tropical, exotic island in Seychelles, which is located at northeast Madagascar, Africa. A beautiful sight to see, if I may say so myself, and no doubt, an unforgettable experience for the island's lucky guests. Not to mention Mr. and Mrs. Rothberg and family, whom anxiously awaits the events to begin because, let's just say, the Rothbergs overwhelmingly crave the delightful presence of strangers from all over the world as their guests. Mr. Julian Murdoch met with Mr. Rothberg to report his tasks before him were complete and in order. Pleased that everything went smoothly and all of the scheduled plans were in motion, Mr. Rothberg replied, "Very well, Julian. I look forward to your presentation before the family and our VIP guests next evening." Mr. Murdoch didn't hesitate when responding, simply saying, "Correct, sir." Then he politely dismissed himself and retreated to his quarters for the evening. The very next day was the beginning of the last week in May, and the VIPs have begun to arrive early ahead of the guest islanders as requested of them. Private planes and yachts swarm the island from various directions throughout the day, as each elite departed their separate vessels, eagerly greeting one another as they made their way to the island's mansion, while being escorted by our chief island butler, Mr. Lord McDowell. Upon approaching the mansion's entrance, awaited three mansion maids, whom proceeded to help the VIP guests with their luggage, as they also led the way to the guest suites. Each arriving VIP guest was given an itinerary, which was to be strictly followed as requested by Mr. Rothberg for all upcoming scheduled events. The VIPs settled in their suites until cocktail hour and club meeting, which was scheduled for 6 p.m. that evening. The wait staff worked diligently to prepare the ballroom for the Rothberg family and VIP guests, and like clockwork, at the stroke of the 6th hour, the evening social events began. The group socialized amongst themselves, enjoying cocktails and appetizers, until the scheduled meeting began. Mr. Rothberg was very fierce about punctuality and things being done in a timely yet orderly fashion. So at 8 p.m. sharp, Mr. Murdoch started the meeting, speaking just above the crowd in a tone loud enough for everyone to hear him. "May I have your attention, please, ladies and gentlemen," he said. "The moment you've been waiting for has arrived." The guests made their way to their seats as the ballroom lights dimmed slowly. A huge projector screen lowered from the ceiling as Mr. Murdoch proceeded with his presentation. "I believe you all will be extremely pleased this year with the carefully selected island guests." The crowd sighed and cheered as they looked onward in amazement. Each islander's profile, as well as their personal information, appeared on the screen before them. Date of birth, height, weight, race, age, blood type, profession, place of residence, etc. As the group peered in excitement, Mr. Murdoch presented each islander one right after another. The selected men and women are as follows: Diamante Love, Jakota Furlan, Letitia Valentine, Jasmine Sir, Starkton Novak, Francisco Forbes, Eldrick Donahue, Connor Cotis, Sebastian Barr, Shalem Yang, Ulrika Sloan, Elena Gentry, Shira Estrada, Annabella Mahoney, Lacey Lamb, Gracelyn Sanford, Katana McMahon, Lucilia Walker, Champagne Hartsong, and Militia Fox. Mr. Murdoch concluded his presentation, and thereafter the club meeting was adjourned, at which time Mrs. Rothberg addressed the crowd, stating to the VIP guests that dinner for the evening was per request, as well as the night was theirs to do whatever they liked on the island. However, Mrs. Rothberg stressed the importance for each VIP guest to maintain the pre-selected scheduled events. Then each person in attendance retired for the night. The family. The Rothberg's family consisted of Mr. Atticus Rothberg, Mrs. Helga Rothberg, their 4 children, Gisela Rothberg, Edith Rothberg, Amir Rothberg, and Akwolf Rothberg, as well as Atticus Rothberg's baby brother. Apollo Rothberg was the youngest brother of Atticus Rothberg, whom was also accompanied by his wife Elmarka Rothberg. The Mr. and Mrs. are first cousins, which was preordained and arranged by their parents when they were children, a family tradition within their bloodline for centuries. The kissing cousins were wed on their 18th birthday and thereafter began to create their very own family. Akwolf is their firstborn eldest child, then Gisela, Amir, and the youngest baby girl, Edith, was abducted from an orphanage at 6 months old. The club. As legend has it, Mr. Rothberg has always had a specific yet elegant kind of taste bud. So with his fortune, he organized a very special club for the elite's pleasure, hence Fancy Feast Island. This club is a top secret and classified operation. Mr. Rothberg's elite cannibal club is very popular amongst the rich and famous, but of course secret and hidden from the prying eyes of the public. But there's much, much more than the delightful dining of this secret society. A very dark and sinister approach to the club's very existence is what makes it evil to the core. The demonic nature of its ritualistic practices are far and beyond wicked. But yearly, the Rothbergs family and Cannibal Club are thrilled with the presence of new unsuspecting island guests. The exquisite meals to die for. The culinary arts cannibal cooks on the island were specially chosen by the Rothbergs family. The finest cooks from various parts of the world are paid handsomely for their specialized expertise. Each gourmet meal included a feast of numerous options from German cuisines, appetizers, desserts, entrees, and a multitude of other fine dining options to cure their highly indifferent cravings. The island servants. The servicemen and women permanently stationed on the island were all housed together in separate living quarters behind the island's mansion in a deluxe housing suite. Each of the servants were once guests invited to the island in previous year's events. They were the fortunate ones left at the end of the event who won the $10,000 prize. Then they were offered the opportunity to reside on the island forever as servants, or they were given the option to free themselves by keeping the money and finding their own way off the island and safe return home. However, there was a catch to the second choice if chose by the guests. They would be given a 24-hour head start, and then they were hunted down by the elite club. Thus, survival was slim to none, as the task was virtually impossible. To this very day, only one amateur wrestler managed to survive the quest and free himself. However, after such a traumatic experience he faced, when the young man made it home, his mental stability declined due to Mr. Rothberg paying to have him watched and targeted by the United States government to ensure he never spake to anyone about what he knew of the island. He was haunted and taunted daily, which led him to indulge in extreme drug and alcohol abuse, which not long after he committed suicide, allegedly by jumping from his 33rd floor apartment window. Nevertheless, most of the guest winners are eager to get off the island at the end of the event, so they take the risk to try to free themselves. But sadly, they all failed the challenge. Furthermore, the servants that chose to stay live in luxury indeed, but are all in fact mind-controlled, brainwashed, and programmed slaves for the Rothbergs and the elite Cannibal Club. June 1st. The big day has arrived at last. The Lucky Islanders are due to make their grand entrance upon Fancy Feast Island very soon, as the island transport team of captain, driver, and escort has departed to recover the guests from their assigned ports. No matter where the Lucky Islanders originally resided, they all were accommodated with first-class airfare and flown to Honolulu, Hawaii. From there, the group would meet each other for the very first time, as they were directed by a personal assistant to a specific destination, at which time the group boarded a private plane for an international flight to Africa. Once the Islanders arrived, they then were escorted to be transported to a yacht which was waiting for them. Finally, the group could unwind for a meet and greet party aboard the Fancy Feast yacht as they sailed their way to the island resort. Fancy Feast is a $6 billion yacht owned by the wealthiest man in America, Mr. Atticus Rothberg, whose net worth is 999 quadrillion. Luxury is an understatement pertaining to what Fancy Feast yacht is equipped with to entertain and accommodate its guests. From swimming pools, hot tubs, jacuzzis, bar, lounge, dance club, elegant dining, guest suites, sun deck, sauna, steam room, fitness gym, cafe, juice bar, casino, underwater viewing room, gourmet kitchen, movie theater, massage room, office conference rooms, master suites, air conditioning, barbecue pits, art gallery, elevators, and much, much more. Nevertheless, all proceedings thus far were off to a great start. The guests are amazingly surprised at how well they're being treated. It's a glorious day with clear skies and sunshine, not to mention the beautiful sight of nature, yet the adventure has just begun. Captain Andrew Still introduced himself to the guests, telling them to make themselves comfortable, as well as they were free to do whatever they wanted aboard the Fancy Feast yacht. Meanwhile, the island assigned driver Daniel Long and the group's escort Jessica Nam stored away the Islanders' luggage. The group gathered together in the lounge for refreshments that were already prepared for them, as they took time to get to know each other better. After everyone loosened up a bit, felt at ease, and acquainted, they all decided to take a tour of the enormous Fancy Feast yacht. Just then, they quickly found their safe haven at the bar. Before anyone knew it or even seen it coming, one drink turned to 2 or 3, then it was a full-blown party for sure. Laughter, cheer, and drunkenness filled the yacht as the guests hit the dance floor in the club with excitement. The music was blasting, lights were flashing, and the bartender Louis just kept the alcohol beverages coming, which were outrageously strong but very good nonetheless. It was amazing how everyone seemed to be getting along so well, the escort thought. Usually, there's 3 or 4 stragglers that kind of is standoffish with the rest of the group. But the party just kept on flowing as the guest islanders merged their way to the pool area. Half the group slam dunked in the swimming pool, as the other half found relaxation in the hot tub more rewarding. At some point, Jessica and Daniel resurfaced to check on the group. And while doing so, Daniel lit a nicely sized cigar, which was laced with marijuana. It fragranced the air with the aroma of herbs. Just then, Diamante Love, one of the male guests, said, "Okay, wait a minute. Do you mean it is cool for us to smoke?" Daniel and Jessica laughed aloud and replied, "Yeah, why not?" Much to everyone's surprise, everyone cheered all at once. Letitia Valentine, who was another male guest, jumped up out of the pool, ran to his bags, and when he reappeared before the group, he had a huge hookah and a big old bag of weed that he smuggled on the trip. While the group was shocked, Connor Cotis, another guest, said, "Man, you took one hell of a risk." "Yeah, I know, right?" said Lacey Lamb, who was a female guest on the yacht. Letitia replied, "Man, I can't leave home without it, so I took my chances." The crowd laughed, but not one of them hesitated to hit that shit. Truth of the matter is, the higher-ups wasn't at all fooled by Letitia's deviousness, and he wasn't the only one who smuggled drugs in their luggage. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Rothberg had connections in high places, whom was already aware of each of the guests' reasons for travel, as well as their final destination to the island. So the offense was overlooked purposely. The group continued to party, but the stiff drinks and the smoking soon knocked them all out, just as they finally approached the Fancy Feast Island. You see, the drinks were so strong because the guest islanders had been drugged, something that was done on purpose to prevent the group from seeing or knowing the direct route to the island. The yacht was docked and each passenger was carried off one by one by an island staff member. Meanwhile, the Rothbergs family as well as the VIP guests watched from a safe distance. Although production was already in full swing as everything that went on the yacht was recorded, in which the Rothbergs and the VIPs eagerly viewed together in anticipation of the guest islanders' arrival. Each guest was placed in their very own suite, along with all of their bags and any other personal belongings they had. It was about an hour that went by before the guests began to awaken in their rooms, rather spooked at the fact that they were all alone and in bed. One by one, they all jumped up and called out for one another as they met each other in their doorways. Elena Gentry, in a worried, concerned tone, asked the others if they remembered getting off the yacht, and no one could. Gracelyn Sanford, however, shook her head as she raised her phone as high as she could when she stated, "Damn, I can't get a signal." The rest of the guests checked their phones and their laptops, then reported back saying, "Same here." Sebastian Barr said, "Great, no signal and no Wi-Fi." Just then, the maids on the island appeared out of nowhere. "Hello, islanders. We are the island maids at your service. Leilona, Sarah, and Jill are our names. And if you all need anything at all, please feel free to call us at any time," Leilona explained. Every room has island line phones, so please view your call log, which is on your desk, to reach any staff on the island. Just me, sir, interrupted. "Okay, that's all fine and good, but how in the hell did we get here? And why isn't there phone reception or Wi-Fi? The three maids looked at one another nervously on how to reply when Sarah spake up and said, "Well, don't you remember, sir? You all were so wasted when you arrived that the staff had to help each of you to your suite." Katana McMahon sighed. "Wow, really?" Jill inserted herself in the conversation, "But it's okay. We made sure all of you were safe and sound in your rooms with all of your belongings. And as far as phone service and Wi-Fi, we do apologize, but those services are only available at the family's mansion." Jakota Furlan shouted, "Yeah, so when will we see this mansion?" Leilona anxiously replied, "Well, sir, all of you guests are welcome to any part of the island for your enjoyment, but per guidelines, guests can only visit the mansion at dinner each night." All of this information is on your itinerary, which is on your nightstand. However, dinner is served at 6 p.m. each night during your stay. And if there is nothing else we can help you with, we will leave you all to enjoy yourselves, Sarah stated. Lacey Lamb said, "Well, alrighty then," as the maids walked away. Champagne Heartsong then suggested the group of them get together and have a look over this itinerary. "Great idea," Sarkton Novak said. "Let's go sit out on the beachfront patio." The group agreed, and so they went. "This place is paradise," Annabella Mahoney mumbled as they walked and captured a glimpse of everything that caught their eye. Finally, approaching the patio, the group was greeted by the most bubbly, wide-eyed waitstaff anyone of them had ever seen. "Hi, I'm Mrs. Clark, and this is Samson Deere. We are the waitstaff on the island. Didn't mean to disturb you, but we seen you all coming and wanted to check if you needed anything at all. Something to drink, snacks, towels maybe, etc." Lucilia Walker said, "Sounds good. I think drinks and snacks all around would be just fine." "Okay, no problem. Coming right up." Agitated, Francisco Forbes snapped at Lucilia. "Haven't you had enough to drink already?" Lucilia sat up in her seat and said, "What the hell is your problem, Francisco? You need to chill, man." Francisco threw up his hands and signaled the waiter, "Hey, just bring me a water." Lacey shouted, "To hell with that. The rest of us will have margaritas." Eureka Sloan stood up and said, Okay, guys, listen. We just got here. Let's just have a look over this itinerary and start having fun." The crowd cheered as their drinks arrived. Francisco still had a tune and rolled his eyes. Diamante lit a cigarette while looking over the itinerary, which he read aloud. "Welcome to Fancy Feast Island, guests. The island is yours for enjoyment and to make your hopes, wishes, and dreams come true. Any and all leisure and amenities are free of charge, as well as the island staff are available to you at any time. The only request of you is to ensure that you are in attendance on time at 6 p.m. sharp each night for dinner, with your hosts, the Rothbergs family, and their VIP guests. Other than that, there is only one rule on this island, and that is the guests are forbidden from going to the mansion at any time without invitation. With that being understood, please enjoy your stay on Fancy Feast Island. Your list of amenities are as follows: beachfront access and patio, lounge, 2 swimming pool areas, spa and massage parlor, hot tub, jacuzzi, yoga meditation studio, full service gym, cinema theater, amusement park, dance club, sauna, steam room, elegant dining, art gallery, salon, coffee shop, juice bar, cocktail bar, cafe, gift shop, snack lounge, Zen garden, and your concert venue is as follows. On day 2, singer Kathy Percy and magician Vlad Cooper. Day 4, rapper Trill Milgolians and comedian Tak Willison. Day 6, singer Ty Fast and magician Neps and Lairs. Day 8, rapper Lil the Infant and comedian Nivek Arts. In conclusion, any amenities that you all require, as well as your toiletries, health, hygiene, or healthcare products, as well as condominiums, are available to you at any time. Any staff service can be reached by dialing #6 on your suite's phone, and you will be redirected. Also remember, one guest has the chance to win $10,000 by the end of your retreat. The group sat in amazement at all the luxury and amenities. They had no idea what to do first, since the concerts didn't start until day 2. The group decided to spend the first day all together and just relax until dinner, and then thereafter they'd visit the island cinema theater for a movie before bed. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the production team reported to Mr. Murdoch to relay to the Rothbergs family and the VIP guests that there were 15,000 in attendance on the dark web viewing the stream thus far. It was 2 hours until dinner, and the cooks and bakers were vigorously working all day preparing the Rothbergs family favorite dishes. A loud bell rang throughout the mansion, the signal given for a mandatory meeting in the library. The Rothbergs family, all VIP guests, and mansion staff were to attend promptly. First, Mr. Rothberg addressed the staff. As all of you know, you're strictly required to maintain your composure and due diligence, as well as you are to be in your assigned positions at all times. You are not to speak unless spoken to, and if you are found to be too friendly with the islanders, fierce consequences will be invoked upon you. All the staff bowed their head in agreement and said, "Yes, sir." Mr. Rothberg firmly replied, "You're dismissed," and continued, "Secondly, VIPs, per regulations, you are to wear your face mask at all times when you are in the presence of the guest islanders, because when they are present before us, the event will be recorded and aired live, as you know. We must not reveal our true identities. However, when the islanders are not present before us in the mansion, you are free to be yourselves freely, as the camera crew and production team will not be recording in the mansion at which hour." Mr. Rothberg concluded, "If there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned and you're free to prepare yourselves for our dinner party and masquerade ball." Back on the island, the guests toured the island grounds as they enjoyed their margaritas to familiarize themselves with where everything was located. Connor Cotis alerted the group, "It's an hour and a half before the dinner party, guys. Perhaps we should head back to get ready." The group agreed and they all hurried back to do just that. Each guest had their own bath facilities, so the group departed to their separate rooms and agreed to all meet back up at the patio around 5:30 p.m. for their escort Jessica to take them to the mansion. Everyone went to their own suite, for the exception of Lucilia Walker and Melissa Fox, whom had become very close with one another on this trip thus far. Familiar spirits, so it seemed. It was as if they had this inside secret that no one else knew. The pair of them decided to get ready together, from showering, dress, makeup, and hair, and indeed they did have a secret. You see, both Lucilia and Melissa are both transgender. But the catch is, with these ladies, they still have their penis. A little secret that leaked when Just Me Sir and Champagne Heartsong finished getting ready early and happened to pass by the ladies' cracked open suite door, when they seen more than an eyeful. While Just Me found the matter humorous and worthy of recording, Champagne thought Just Me's actions was disrespectful, so she didn't hesitate to give him a punch in the shoulder. Just Me ran off in laughter, but Champagne took it upon herself to tap on the lady's cracked open door. Lucilia and Melissa answered, "Come on in." Champagne entered the room and proceeded to explain to Lucilia and Melissa what happened, which the ladies were slightly appalled by, but wasn't a bit ashamed of whom they were at all. Just then, feeling at ease, Champagne shared her own little secret with them. As it seems, she too is transgender, but luckily has been fully transformed due to her rich upper-class family's money. Surprised but thrilled, the other two ladies looked at one another and cheered. "Yay!" they shouted, feeling like they were amongst besties or even family. 5:20 p.m. Okay, ladies, we gotta hurry up. It's almost time for the dinner party. Back amongst the guys, Just Me just couldn't wait to spread gossip about what he seen and knew. While Damonte, Jakota, Letitia, and Just Me, of course, all straight men, were shocked at the scandal and found it to be funny. Little did they know, Starkton, Francisco, and Eldrick didn't find it funny at all because they were gay men. Nor did Connor, Sebastian, or Shalem find the matter amusing, as they are too bisexual themselves. But the fact of the matter is, it really didn't matter, because they all were exposed, which they didn't know. They had no privacy on the island at all. Each of them were recorded, even in private, in their suites, in the shower, in the bathroom, even on the toilet. Yes, any and everywhere one could imagine. After all, such content is what pleased the freaks on the dark web, which they eagerly paid high dollar for. At last, the group was ready for their dinner party as they gathered on the patio together. They sat in anticipation, waiting for their escort Jessica to lead them to the island's mansion. The suspense lingered in the air as they worried about meeting their host. 5:50 p.m. Jessica Numb appeared out of nowhere. That woman was swift, but her footsteps were light as feathers. "Greetings, Islanders. I've come to escort you to the mansion for your day one dinner party. Are you ready?" Everyone in attendance promptly replied yes, and off they went on their way. Upon their arrival to the mansion, however, front door, each of them gasps in amazement as to how huge the island's mansion really was. The door flung open, and the butler, Mr. Lord McDowell, introduced himself. In a very nonchalant kind of way, he said, "Lovely to have met you all. Please follow me. Your hosts are waiting." The islanders looked at one another as they cautiously and curiously entered the foyer of the mansion and proceeded to follow the butler, whom was ahead of them. The lights were dimly lit, and the sounds of classical music and soft chatter lingered in the distance. However, for some strange reason, nervousness crept through their minds of each of the guests the closer and closer that they got to the grand dining room. Shalam Yang tried to distress the crowd by making a little joke, but it only made matters worse. He suggested it felt like they were in some creepy horror movie. Just me, sir, found it to be funny, though, and also added, "Yeah, now we're just waiting for the bad guy with the machete to jump out and all the ladies to run, tripping, and fall." Of course, all the guys laughed, but none of the women found the joke to be funny at all. Even the butler had a smug look on his face when he mumbled to, "You have no idea." Diamante said, "What the hell did he mean by that?" And the group shrugged their shoulders. "I have no idea," they all said. Finally, they made their grand entrance into the dining room. The host, as well as all of the others, stood up as the islanders entered. Much to their surprise, everyone had on different fanciful-looking masks, which covered everything except for their nose and their mouth. Shira Estrada grabbed the hand of Eureka Sloan and whispered, "What in the hell is this?" Eureka replied, "Hun, your guess is about as good as mine." The dining room was massive, to the likes of which they'd never seen before. The table was so long it could comfortably seat 50 persons, a custom-made piece for the Rothbergs, of course. Each guest took an available seat, as they were even more flabbergasted at the gigantic feast before them. Mr. Rothberg welcomed the guests and encouraged them all to enjoy as he briefed them on what was on the menu for the evening. But, of course, Mr. Rothberg left out a few details about the meal they were about to eat, in an effort not to alert them. The feast included the following: Italian chickpea, spinach, and rice soup with smothered human heart, sautéed sea scallops with caramelized apples, walnuts, and human liver, creamy pasta carbonara, garlicly new potatoes, lemon parmesan roasted broccoli, herbed corn, roasted rack of human ribs with rosemary and pumpkin, classic Greek salad and coconut lime dressing, fruit bowl, sinfully sweet blackberry mousse tart, red velvet cake truffles, and strawberry cream pie, as well as all the trimmings like gourmet rolls, gravy, seasonings, and sauces, and red and white wine. Everyone began to dig in as everything seemingly looked so appetizing. The group of them spake amongst themselves, when Annabella Mahoney spake loud enough for everyone to hear her. "No wonder you all call it a fancy feast. That it is indeed." The host laughed aloud as the other guests nodded their heads in agreement. All of the VIPs found Annabella's comment humorous, as the guests had no idea they were consuming human meat. However, the islanders started to feel a bit uncomfortable as they all kind of noticed the hosts as well as the VIPs constantly staring at them while they ate. Francisco Forbes was the first to say, "Okay, I'm stuffed," signaling the waitstaff to remove his plate. One of the VIPs mentioned, "But you haven't even had dessert yet." Francisco replied, "No matter. I'm full for now. Thanks." Everyone noticed the reaction of the VIP guests, whom smile turned into a slight frown quickly. Graceland Sanford whispered to Francisco, "Maybe you should have just tried a bit, you know? It is free after all, and they may think you're being rude." Francisco replied, "No way. I said I've had enough, and that's that." At this point, everyone knew that Francisco had a bit too much to drink, so everybody ignored his weirdness and finished their dinner. As the servants cleared the table, Mrs. Rothberg spake to everyone in attendance and requested, "Won't you please join us in the ballroom for a masquerade party?" The islanders looked at one another and then agreed, and they were escorted by Mr. McDowell, the butler. Francisco, however, told the group he wasn't feeling well, and maybe it was something he ate that wasn't agreeing with his stomach. So before anyone knew it or could assist him, Francisco dipped off from the group on his own in search for a restroom. But the mansion was huge, and he had no idea where to go. So he stumbled his way around. Before the guests realized he was gone, no one had any idea where he went. Nevertheless, the islanders entered the ballroom and was shocked and surprised at what they seen. Illusionists, exotic dancers, glass trays with an array of drugs on it, alcohol galore, a live band, and numerous of erotic things going on in each and every corner all over the ballroom. The guests had no idea this was that kind of island, but they mixed and they mingled with the VIPs and their hosts anyway, and partied all night long. So much for making it to the theater, Diamante thought. Although a bit confused about what was really going on, he was eager to get his party on anyway. In all the excitement, no one noticed Mr. Rothberg or his brother, Apollio Rothberg, slip away, whom then found Francisco wandering about. This made Mr. Rothberg and Apollio mad as hell and furious. The pair of the men grabbed Francisco so fast and dragged him to a dungeon, which was located in the basement of the mansion. Francisco screamed and cursed, kicking, yelling, "I was just looking for the damn bathroom." "Oh, really? In my study, huh?" Mr. Rothberg shouted back. Apollio tied Francisco to a railing post in the dungeon. Then Atticus ordered Apollio to go and fetch General Amos Khan and Father Evilizas, whom were VIPs at the mansion as well. Apollio hurried and returned to the ballroom and searched high and low for the general and father. And when he did, it was no surprise that he found them both in a sexual embrace with two of the island guests, Starkton Novak and Connor Coates, whom were clearly loaded on ecstasy, alcohol, and meth. Apollio had to pry the two of them away from their hot and heavy lust fest to tell them what was going on. The three of them rushed back to the dungeon while Starkson and Connor continued making out. Once they arrived, Atticus had beat Francisco something terrible, yet he was still alive. They stripped Francisco of his clothing, and Father Evilizas began chanting a satanic prayer. Atticus, Apollio, General Khan, and the father went into a demonic trance as they undressed and forcibly raped Francisco. At some point, while sodomizing Francisco, Atticus grabbed a carving knife and began slicing Francisco all over his body. Droplets of flesh fell everywhere as the group of them began consuming parts of Francisco's body. The gruesome scene was being aired live on the dark web as the ratings went through the roof, which its viewership was now at 550,000 and counting. Atticus used the dungeon speaker to alert the butcher and chef to tend to Francisco's body, whom was bleeding to death slowly as the audience watched. The men then dismissed themselves, retreated to their rooms to clean up, and returned to the party, which was now much more lively than before. However, several of the islanders had grown restless, not to mention highly intoxicated, so they were ready to go. Shira Estrada alerted one of the security guards, Roberto Arnes, to inform him they were ready to leave the mansion. Shira then took it upon herself to gather up the rest of the islander guests, whom were all scattered about everywhere at this point. Once they all were huddled up together, this was the first time that they noticed Francisco was nowhere to be found. The group grew suspicious as they looked around when they noticed everyone was eerily staring at them. Elena Gentry was the first to say, "Come on guys, let's get out of here. I'm uncomfortable being here any longer." Annabella Mahoney said, "Yeah, let's go," as they proceeded to make their exit from the ballroom. The security guard was signaled the okay to allow the guests to leave by Mrs. Rothberg. Once outside of the mansion, the islanders breathed a sigh of fresh air in relief. I didn't think we'd ever get out of there. Starkton Novak, great. Damonte laughed aloud, saying, "Seemed like you were having a pretty good damn time to me, bruh." Katana McMahon, tipsy and stumbling as they walked, said, "Never mind all of that. What do y'all think happened to Francisco?" Eureka Sloan stepped in. "Well, he did say he wasn't feeling well earlier, you know." "Yeah, that's right," Letitia Valentine remembered aloud. "Maybe dude just left and came back to the suite to lay down or something." "Maybe so," Jakota Ferlin said, whom was snuggled up and real cozy with Shira Estrada. It seems the two of them hit it off real well together, as did Starkton Novak and Connor Coates, who couldn't keep their hands off of each other. "Well, here we are," Lacey Lamb said, as the group made it back to their suite. "I'm beat, so I'll see you guys and gals later, say in the cafe for brunch." "Okay, cool," everyone replied. Of course, those of them who were coupled up spent the night together. Even Lucilia, Champagne, and Melissa bunked together in one suite for their own little powwow. Everyone else went to their own room and totally crashed for the night. Not one guest even thought to check Francisco's suite to see if he was there. By now, they had forgotten. Letitia and Shower wasted no time getting it on. Their moans and groans whistled through the walls of their suite from one to another. Loud and kinky is how the two of them liked it. But that wasn't the only bumping and grinding going on, as Starkton and Connor had them a little love-making session going on as well. Something in which shot up the ratings on the dark web. Lucilia, Champagne, and Militia set up talking, taking shots of liquor, and gossiping about everything that had happened on the trip thus far. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the Rothbergs family and the VIPs gathered in the lounge for a little rendezvous of their own, watching the Islanders on a huge jumbo screen while feasting on the bloody raw organs of Francisco and sipping on Bloody Marys made fresh with the young man's blood. Ackworth Rothberg spake frankly to his father and asked, "So when do the games begin, Dad? I'm ready to get started." Atticus responded, "It's only day 2, my boy," just as the clock struck midnight. "Have patience, son. You're sure to have your fun soon enough." The VIP guests giggled as they agreed. Day 2, 6 a.m. Several of the guest Islanders arrived early in the morning because they couldn't sleep. Just me, sir, awakened, showered, and went to the gym for a workout. Eldrick Donahue and Shalem Yang happened to run into each other at the pool and decided to go for a swim. Eureka Sloan, Annabella Mahoney, and Gracelyn Sanford found comfort at the coffee shop where they sat and planned out their day. The rest of the group must have had a hangover or something because they all slept in late. But around 8 a.m., just me, Eldrick, Shalem, Eureka, Annabella, and Gracelyn met in the cafe for a light but hearty breakfast. Waitress and took the group's order, and both she and the cook Clark Rock delivered their meals. After which, the group was approached by one of the Islanders' trainers who invited them to come to the yoga meditation studio. Daisy Smooth was the trainer's name, and she seemed very nice, calming, and peaceful, so the group agreed to meet her there. Their yoga session started at 9:30 a.m., and by 10:30 a.m., the group felt very relaxed and at ease. The group of them headed back to their suite to freshen up for the day when finally they ran into a few of the sleepyheads whom had just decided to wake up. Lucilia, Champagne, Militia, Sebastian, and Jacoda, whom all appeared to be excited about something. When Just Me asked what was going on, everybody began to eagerly speak at once. Eureka raised her voice to get everybody's attention and to calm them down a bit, which really only kind of awakened the rest of the guest Islanders, whom flew to their doorways in excitement to see what was happening. Champagne told everyone to follow her to the patio deck, as they all did. Champagne proceeded to tell the group that she found a letter that had been slipped under their doorway, which read like a riddle. "Want to play a game for the chance to win $10,000? Find the clue, bring it to the mansion, and the lucky winner could be you. But don't tell a soul what you know, or you'll surely regret you did so. Connor said, hold up. Okay, wait a minute. While rubbing his eyes, what clue? Where is it? And take it to the mansion? Hell no. That don't sound right and sound like a smooth setup to me, when the itinerary clearly said not to go to the mansion uninvited. Elena agreed, saying, yeah, he do have a point there, guys. Melissa said, but maybe the letter is an invitation to the mansion if we find the clue. Letitia shouted, yeah, makes sense, but somebody here had to create this game in the first place. Annabella said she didn't like the idea of this, but how about if everybody went back to their suite to see if they too had a letter? Katana mumbled, Francisco. I bet this is his idea of a joke. The group stormed their way to Francisco's room and was shocked to see what they found. The maid Sarah was cleaning his room and all of Francisco's things were gone. Sarton asked Sarah, where is Francisco? And Sarah replied, I wouldn't know, sir. I was just ordered to clean his room. The group yelled, what? Then Lacey found a note on the desk that stated Francisco grew ill last evening and requested to leave the island. The island's captain transported Francisco to the nearest airport on the mainland in Africa for him to get a flight home. The group found this to be mysterious, but figured if Francisco wanted to leave, then he didn't owe them any explanation. Back to the matter of the letter about the game. The group searched each of their suites, and indeed, they all had a letter that read the same. Just then, the group noticed the maid leaving and asked what did she know about the supposed game. Sarah didn't say a word, just reached in her pocket and handed the group a note with a creepy smile on her face as she walked away. Graceland read the note aloud. Another riddled clue. Look high, look low. The hidden clue you seek is in your soul. Sebastian said, what in the hell does that mean? Diamante said, I don't know, man, but only one of us can win the $10,000. Eldrick agreed, yep, that's right, man. How about we just go to brunch as we planned and figure this thing out later? Most of the group agreed. Well, all of those whom slept in late at least. But the early birds explained that they had just ate and was going to go and freshen up. Katana said, well, fine then. We'll just all get together and let's meet to check out the amusement park around 1 p.m. then, huh? The Islanders agreed. But Katana knew Eldrick was up to something and wanted to find the clue on his own. Just me, Eldrick, Shalam, Eureka, Annabella, and Graceland went to shower and redress as planned. The rest of the group went to the cafe and juice bar for brunch. The group was greeted by the waitress and Samson, whom took their orders as the group of them discussed how things were getting rather worrisome on the island. Lacey didn't disagree, but reminded everyone that they were having fun on a free trip thus far. Champagne agreed with Lacey, but mentioned the game again, wondering what the riddle meant. Back in his suite, Eldrick paced the floor back and forth. He was pretty good with puzzles, so it bothered him not to know what the riddle really meant exactly. But as he sat down to take off his shoes, it hit him all of a sudden. Soles, like the soles of your shoes. Then he remembered everybody found their note on their desk, But the three ladies that slumbered together in the same suite, which was Lucilia, Champagne, and Militia, their letter was slipped under their doorway. Eldrick said, "That has to be a clue within a clue," to himself. So Eldrick snuck into the girls' suite and began to search everywhere. He then opened the closet door, and they had shoes high and low, just as the riddle said. Eldrick checked every pair of shoes but found nothing until he noticed a single shoebox in the corner. Inside was a gold pair of stiletto heels, and on the sole, sure enough, was another clue. You found the clue, but do it belong to you? Slip on the golden shoe and embrace the woman hidden inside of you. Come to the mansion if you dare and show us what you got. Maybe you have the clue to win the 10,000. Eldrick thought long and hard about the riddle. The shoe didn't belong to him, but as a guy who was a gay man, he secretly wanted to be a woman all his life and never told anyone. He put on the shoe as the clue said, and it fit him perfectly. So he decided to sell the shoes instead. He hid the shoes in his suite and ran off to meet up with the group as planned until he could figure out what to do next. As planned, the islanders met up at the amusement park. Although the game and the 10,000 was yet and still weighing heavy on the group's mind, they let loose a little and enjoyed some rides and some games. All seemed to be well, but Eldrick was mysteriously acting weird. The group had enough excitement at the amusement park and for the moment preferred some adult entertainment. So to the beach they went for an afternoon evening swim and cocktails, which seemed to be their favorite thing to do thus far. They all changed into their swim attire when Lucilia screamed to the top of her lungs, and everyone rushed to her aid to see what was the matter. Lucilia was so upset because someone had been through her things, and she was missing a brand new pair of shoes. Champagne did what she could to calm Lucilia down, whom was shouting to the top of her lungs, "Who would do this? Who would do this?" Eldrick seemed to have slipped away before anyone noticed. Then the group merged their way to the beach as planned. Ironically, an array of bottles of alcohol was already ready and available to the group. Militia made Lucilia a drink, and everyone took a few shots and then went for a swim. Everyone kind of seemed to forget about the game, as it wasn't all that important to most of the group. But as Annabella picked up the bottle of vodka, she noticed a note underneath. A riddle clue, she thought. How lovely are you to console a friend whom soul was ripped from her when the sole of her shoes was stolen by a man. Find out which one has the gun, and the 10,000 you would have won. Annabella felt shock come all over her as she called the women to her to show them what she had found. She read it aloud again for them. How lovely are you to console a friend whom soul was ripped from her when the sole of her shoes was stolen by a man. Found out which one has the gun, and the 10,000 you would have won. Lucilia was mad all over again. Eureka, maybe this is just some type of joke to screw with our heads. The letter is practically telling us to turn on the men because one of them stole a pair of shoes and also smuggled a gun on the island, said Lacey. This is crazy, shouted Militia. I didn't come here for this. We're supposed to be having fun. Dakota wondered what was going on, that all the women were huddled up together, So he walked over to grab a drink and find out what was happening. They showed him the riddle, clue, and Dakota laughed. Come on, guys, it's a joke. Being played on us by the staff or something. The women wasn't buying it though. Something was going on. And a few of them knew this wasn't for fun or a joke. Nevertheless, the group continued partying, and no one noticed Eldrick wasn't anywhere to be found. But back in his suite, he took pleasure in modeling around in the golden shoes. He wanted that $10,000 so badly for some reason, but it seemed something more was tempting him to sneak off to the mansion on his own. So he did just that. He waited until the sun went down, and it was almost time for dinner. 4:45 p.m. Eldrick set out on a mission to claim the $10,000 prize for himself. With the gold heels on and packing his gun and cocaine that he smuggled on the plane, Eldrick just knew nothing could go wrong. He snuck away from the other islanders yet again, past security and several other staff. He managed to make pit stops in between along the way to continue his cocaine binge that had him wired up since they had been on the island. When finally Eldrick reached the mansion, instead of him making his untimely entrance to the front door, Eldrick decided to wander around a while to a rear door of the mansion, which VIP Jean-Rob Ledge noticed and alerted the others. Apollio Rothberg and nephew Akwolf Rothberg confronted Eldrick. What in the hell do you think you're doing back here, boy? Eldrick pointed to the gold shoes and replied, I found the clue in the sole of the shoes to win the $10,000. Apollio and Akwolf was now accompanied by Atticus and Jean-Rob. Oh, really? Atticus said. Eldrick said yes. See for yourself. The group of the men looked down at the gold shoes that Eldrick was wearing, laughed, and Akwolf interrupted. Yes, but do they belong to you? Eldrick hung his head in despair. No, they don't, he said. It was a trap all along, and Eldrick took the bait. Atticus commented, well then, you didn't win the $10,000, but you're just in time for dinner. Jean-Rob went to grab Eldrick to drag him inside, but before he could, Eldrick wildly waved his gun and fired a shot in the air. If you touch me, I'll kill you, Eldrick shouted in fear. Now I want off this damn island now. Akwolf and Apollio laughed aloud. Good luck with that. Just then, a security whom heard the first shot hurried to see what was going on when they ran up behind Eldrick with the gun, and they shot him twice in the back. Mr. Atticus Rothberg ordered security to get him up and bring him inside. Eldrick was taken to the dungeon of the mansion where the rest of the family and the VIP were. Eldrick was hanged upside down, drained of his blood, skinned alive while he was barely clinging on to life from his gunshot wounds. The butcher then chopped Eldrick's body into pieces and filleted the most tender parts of his body. Back at the beach, however, the islanders heard the shots ring out. Did y'all hear that? Lacey asked the others in a panic. Letitia, high as a kite, smoking his blunt, replied, yeah, we hear gunshots all the time where I'm from. Maybe they're hunting or something. No worries. Graceland smirked and said, on a damn island, Letitia? This ain't no damn Tennessee. Letitia rolled his eyes and suggested the group chill out and just hit the blunt. At this point, the women were kind of irritated with the men and decided to go get ready for dinner. Diamante and Letitia went to the gym to play basketball, and the other guys took a few more shots before dinner. Just Me yelled across the island at Diamante and Letitia. "Hey, aren't y'all coming to dinner, man?" he shouted. "Hell no. Forget that," Letitia said. Sebastian felt a little uneasy about that, as it was one of the main rules requested of them, he thought. Regardless, Sebastian then noticed Eldrick was nowhere to be found either. So he asked the other guys, "Hey, where is Eldrick?" All of the other guys responded they didn't know. Dakota then said, "Man, some weird shit has been happening since last night." And Starkton replied, "Yeah, I know. And that little game got the women tripping for real, man." "Well, let's go to dinner and just get the hell out of there tonight," suggested by Connor. "Okay, sounds good, because something definitely feel a little bit off about this place." Shalem shared with the group of guys. 5:30 p.m. The ladies finished preparing themselves and met in the lounge area. Lacey couldn't get over the game, riddles, Lucilia missing shoes, the gunshots, or the fact that two of the guys went MIA, as she explained to the women as they waited for their escort. Just then, Lucilia blurted out, "Oh, no worries, guys. I meant to tell you, my shoes were sitting on my bed when I went to change just now." Champagne yelled, "What? Who put them there?" Lucilia didn't really care. She was just glad she got them back. Militia interrupted, saying, "Yeah, but what about the riddle?" Lucilia mumbled, "Oh yeah, that's right." Katana stood up in excitement. "That's it, Lucilia. The soles of your shoe." "Well, never mind that now. Here comes the escort, Jessica." Just then, Jessica Nam approached the group, and the guys walked up as well just in time. The islanders and their escort proceeded towards the mansion. Elenia whispered to Dakota, "Hey, where's Diamante and Letitia?" Dakota smirked and told Elena they decided to skip dinner and went to play basketball. Eureka overheard the conversation and said, "Wow, really?" Dakota said, "Yep, but that's them. Oh well." "But they said they'll meet up with us later at the concert," Dakota added. The guests arrived at the mansion yet again, and just as before, the host as well as the VIP guests were in these ridiculous-looking masks yet again. Annabella asked Shira, "What is up with the mask already?" Shira shrugged her shoulders. "I don't know, but it's like they don't want us to see their face or something." Once again, the feast was huge, but ironically, several seats were empty this time because some of the VIP guests were absent, as were Diamante, Letitia, Eldrick, and of course, Francisco, whom supposedly abruptly left the island. The Rosbergs family inquired about the missing guests, but the group had this eerie feeling that he already knew what was up. Mr. Rosberg made the comment, "Such a shame our urban guests could not join us, because tonight's soul food would have surely given them a taste of home." Champagne rolled her eyes as she looked at Shira, as they too are brown-skinned and or African American, and for some reason felt Mr. Rosberg's comment was rather racist. Not to mention the clue about the soul food, get it, soul, which caught Lucilia's attention. Champagne all of a sudden asked to be excused and for directions to the restroom. One of the maids was motioned to assist Champagne to the ladies' room. Once she walked into the restroom, she found it kind of weird that the maid, Jill, just stood there waiting on her. Nevertheless, Champagne didn't need to use the bathroom at all. She brought her phone and was with her to try to get a signal to make a phone call. But when she took too long to come out of the bathroom, both the maid and one of the female VIP guests busted through the door. "What do you think you're doing, girl?" the masked woman shouted. Excuse the hell out of me? I'm trying to make a damn call." "That's not allowed," Jill said. "Why?" Champagne replied. "Because Mr. Rothberg don't like it or allow outside communication beyond the island." Champagne said, "Well, that's just ridiculous." And before Champagne could utter another word, the masked woman, whom was Beatrice Knox, grabbed her by the hair and slammed her head against the wall, which knocked poor Champagne plumb out. "This one needs to learn a lesson," Beatrice told Jill. "Get Mr. McDowell and take her to my room." "Yes, ma'am," Jill replied, and complied with her orders. Meanwhile, the guest islanders finished their meal, which was definitely jam-packed, full of flavor. The chefs were something spectacular because the guests had no idea that they were consuming the human flesh of their absent guests, islanders Eldrick and Francisco, which the Rothbergs and the VIP guests took great pleasure in knowing. However, several of the islanders wasn't all too thrilled with the feast and complained of the taste of some of the dishes, as well as upsetting their stomachs. Something, of course, they only discuss amongst themselves to keep from appearing rude or ungrateful. The group began to worry about Champagne, whom hadn't returned to the dining room yet. So they asked about her to the staff, whom assured them she was okay but was eager to make a call, so she was directed to the study to do so, which was a complete fabricated lie, but the guests went along with the explanation, seeing as they didn't know otherwise. Back on the island, Diamante and Letitia finished their basketball game and weightlifting workout and stopped by the bar for a few nightcaps before the concert. The two guys had a few beers and a couple of shots, then decided to head back to their suite to shower and get ready for some entertainment. Letitia was the first to feel the effects of his drinking kicking in, which was weird because the guys were pretty buff and could hold their liquor. Before long, Letitia slumped over on their way back to the suite, and Diamante had to step in and help him. But by now, even Diamante was cramping all over his body for some reason. Letitia said, "Man, something ain't right. I think that bartender drugged us." Diamante didn't want to believe that, so he suggested, "Nah, man, it's from the workout, probably." But Diamante knew that that couldn't be, and something really didn't feel right. They finally made it to the suite, and Letitia fell head first on the bed. "I'm just going to chill here a little bit, man, until I feel better," he told Diamante, whom agreed, saying, "All right, man, I'm going to go and take a few pain pills and hop in the shower." Diamante did just that, but when he got in the shower, he began seeing some shadowy, dark figures all around him. "Hey, is that you, Letitia?" he screamed, but no answer. "Stop playing, man," Diamante yelled as he turned off the shower's water. But this was no joke. 3 of the VIP guests, dressed from head to toe in full-body black invisible suits, were standing in Diamante's bathroom. Although dressed in nothing but a towel, Diamante was no easy target. He was all too prepared to fight for his life if he had to, as he had so many times back home in Los Angeles, California. Not to mention, he was a black belt in karate, so he braced himself to knuckle up against the invisible suit wearing figures. The three individuals lunged at him all at once, which Diamante figured they would. With barely any effort, he punched the shortest of them in the throat and managed to snap his neck. One down and two to go, yelled Diamante in a rage, while boxing it out with one of the mysterious intruders. The others sliced Diamante in the side with a very sharp object. This seemed only to piss Diamante off even more. One headbutt from Diamante cracked the skull open of his opponent, who stumbled backwards and began to bleed profusely. That left only the weapon-wielding bandit, whom Diamante quickly disarmed now that they were one-on-one. But a horrific blow to the ribs shattered the trespasser altogether. Diamante's adrenaline was pumping. He hurried, grabbed his clothes and shoes, threw them on, and screamed for Letitia, who never appeared throughout the entire commotion. Before running out the room, Diamante just had to know who these creeps were. So one by one, he ripped off the black invisible mask, and he could not believe his eyes. The masked men were well-known people. Jalen Zaps, whom is a celebrity entertainer, Martus Zuckentyre, billionaire, CEO, and Pastor Joseph Stein, famous televangelist megapastor. Diamante had to get Letitia up and go and warn the others, but when he ran into Letitia's room, he was sprawled out in the bed, foaming at the mouth. It appeared he had overdosed on something, but Diamante seen needle marks in his arm and neck that was bleeding. He checked Letitia's pulse, but Letitia was dead. Maybe they had been drugged at the bar, Diamante thought. But there was no doubt the black, invisible suit-wearing men attacked Letitia first, then came after him. Diamante rushed to the phone and dialed for the nurse and the doctor's staff. Nurse Vivian Long picked up the phone. "How may I help you?" Diamante shouted through the phone. He and a fellow guest had been attacked by masked men. The nurse was rather calm and stated, "Okay, sir, Dr. Sapphire will come to see what's the problem." Diamante hung up the phone. He knew these people wasn't right at all. He had to warn the group before it was too late for them to. He ran as fast as he could towards the island mansion, but was stopped dead in his tracks when he heard, "You should have joined us for dinner, Diamante. Now you must pay with your life." Diamante yelled, "Bullshit! To hell with your damn dinner. You motherfuckers are crazy, and I'm getting the hell up out of here." He looked all around anxiously, but he didn't see anything, so he continued running, trying to find his way in darkness. "You hurt some very important people, Diamante." The distant whispered voice spake again. "Hell no! They attacked me first," Diamante screamed. But before he could run any further, a swift breeze from a bow and arrow flew past his face. "Next time I won't miss," said the mysteriously evil voice, and another arrow punctured Diamante in the back. The four Rothberg children came out of nowhere from the shadows. Gisela told Edith to get the security guards to come pick up the mess. Meanwhile, Gisela, Amir, and Akwolf kneeled down, by Diamante's body and began slicing open his face and chest, taking much delight in rubbing his blood all over themselves, as well as taking a bite or two out of his heart that they had ripped out. The security guards arrived and moved Diamante's body to the butcher shop. Aqua ordered the butcher to cut off Diamante's feet and place them in his room to add to his collection. The Rothberg children decided to leave Letitia as a shock to the others. The nurse and doctor, however, had the 3 VIP guests removed to be mourned by the Rothberg's family and the VIP guests later, something in which made them very upset. Gisela, Amir, and Aqua went to clean themselves up before the other islanders departed the mansion. 7:30 p.m. The guest islanders were eager to leave the awkward mansion that was always eerily dark with dim lighting inside. Mr. Murdoch escorted the guests out and to the concert venue, which everyone was excited to attend. 2 artists were flown in for one night to entertain the islanders. The guests were relieved to breathe in fresh air as they were back on the island. The group hit up the bar first to get them in the mood to party. Tonight's concert included Kathy Percy, who is an awesome, very popular A-list celebrity singer, as well as the crowd would be wowed by a very famous magician, Vlad Cooper. The night was bound to be fun and full of excitement, and the island guests couldn't wait. Back at the mansion, Mr. Rothberg was furious that 3 of his VIP guests were killed, as he was briefed on the matter by Mr. Murdoch, the nurse, and the doctor. He ordered a mandatory meeting with his guests in the library. As it seemed, the dark web views had grown to 2.5 million, as well as the revenue for this event had far surpassed its expected amount, a fact in which was relayed to Mr. Murdoch by the chief production team and camera crew manager. Mr. Rothberg paced the floor back and forth as he was far too upset to sit and relax. Mrs. Rothberg and Mrs. Elmarka Rothberg took a roll call of the guests and family. However, Beatrice Knox wasn't in attendance, nor was Aqua Rothberg. "Where in the hell are they?" Mr. Atticus Rothberg shouted. The group was shocked to learn that a live feed was still streaming in the mansion, as well as on the island. As they viewed the footage on the big jumbo screen, Beatrice Knox was in her suite inside the mansion as she appeared on screen in a lace lingerie, embraced sexually with Champagne Hartson, who was an island guest. Champagne was completely nude. A gauged ball was in her mouth, gagging her. Gold dog lace tied around her neck. A gold ankle shackles were around her as well, and a gold chain was around her waist that suspended Champagne dangling in midair. Beatrice beat Champagne profusely with a leather and gold whip, which tore open the poor girl's skin. Beatrice laughed uncontrollably as blood flew all over the room and her from her victim. Beatrice laid upon her bed with Champagne hanging above her when she took a large machete and began slicing and dicing Champagne's body as she bathed in her blood and masturbated until she climaxed from her erotic perversion. Something in which highly turned on the other VIPs watching, whom themselves began sexually gratifying one another as they viewed the grossly gruesome footage. Meanwhile, the stream then flipped to the room of Aquolf, whom was dressed in full drag as a woman. Aquolf danced before his sacred closet of severed feet from all of his many victims. Because of Aquolf's sick obsession within his foot fetish, he began sucking the toes of Diamante's severed feet, which highly aroused him. As Diamante's deceased body lay on his bed, Aquolf then went on to have sex with Diamante's dead body as he penetrated him again and again, which was Aquolf's greatest pleasure, as he too was an avid necrophiliac. Mr. Rothberg, pleased now that his son was safe and sound in the mansion, looked at his wife, Mrs. Rothberg, and said, "That's my boy." In which Mrs. Rothberg replied, saying, "I know, dear." At this point, the Rothbergs' meeting was a full-blown orgy. The Rothbergs mixed and mingled with their VIP guests for hours upon hours through the night, while also enjoying the fresh refreshments delivered to them of bloody cocktail drinks and human gourmet appetizers of various organ parts. Back on the island, the concert had begun, but Lucilia and Melissa began to worry because neither Champagne, Diamante, or Letitia were there. They tried alerting the others, but no one seemed to really care. They were tipsy, having a good time, and the music was blasting. The ladies just decided to enjoy themselves for the moment and figured once things settled down, then they would mention it to the group again. Kathy Percy put on a great show, and the guest magician took the stage. He's definitely quite the illusionist, as he had the crowd wild for sure. Even the island staff were in attendance and made sure all of the guests were accommodated accordingly to their liking. The concert was nearing its end, and the guests was wired up, for the exception of Lucilia and Melissa, whom was concerned something very badly was wrong, and they were determined to get to the bottom of what was going on, especially with their newfound friend, Champagne. After the concert, the group got a chance to meet the artists up close and personal, and they each received autographs, t-shirts, and a picture. Afterwards, the Islander guests stopped by the snack bar to grab a few of their faves before heading back to their suites. During their walk, Melissa was the first to mention to the group about the absence of the other missing guests, something in which no one else really noticed, for the exception of a few. Connor inserted himself in the conversation by stating, "Well, it's all good, guys. Maybe the staff know something about this and could help us out." The Islanders successfully made it back to their suite, and the first thing they did was to check for the missing guests. Champagne wasn't in her room and nowhere to be found, but her room was clean and all of her things were gone. Lucilia told Melissa, "See, I told you, something was wrong." The ladies called out to the rest of the group to tell them what they found. Then they went to check Diamante's room, where they ran into the maid Sarah, who was in the processing of finishing cleaning his room. Eureka asked Sarah, "What the hell is going on here? And where are the other guests?" Sarah replied, I really don't know, ma'am. All I'm aware of is the doctor and nurse were called. Then I was ordered to clean the room. Sarkton shouted, The doctor? What happened? The rest agreed, yelling at Sarah. You know more about this, and you know more than what you're saying. Sarah said, I assure you I do not, and excused herself. Just Me suggested maybe they should call for the guest specialist, Mr. Murdoch. The group agreed. But first, let's check on Letitia, Shira requested, as she ran down the hallway. The group followed in behind her, but was in shock as Shira screamed once upon the doorway to Letitia's room. What is it? The guests shouted. Then they seen the horrific sight. Letitia sprawled out on the bed, dead. His eyes was open and had turned a cold gray. Dried blood seeped from his neck and his arm, and a dried foamy substance covered his nose and mouth. Letitia's nightstand was covered with cocaine, pills, and some type of liquid in a vial. There was also a needle on the floor and a bunch of alcohol bottles as well. It looked as if Letitia overdosed on something, but many of the guests couldn't help but feel that everything in the room looked staged. Letitia drank for sure and loved his weed, but no one had seen him getting high on anything else before. Annabella picked up the phone and called for Mr. Murdoch, the Dr. Sapphire, and Nurse Long, whom showed up to the suites promptly. All the guests were told to sit on the patio and until further directed. The group did so and watched as the body of Letitia was moved by security. Mr. Murdoch, the nurse, and doctor then addressed the guest islanders. The guests sat in anticipation of an explanation. Mr. Murdoch began by saying he and the island staff were very sorry the group had to witness such a great loss of their co-islander, Letitia. It seems he had a severe drug addiction that no one was aware of. Graceland interrupted, saying, yeah, so what about the other guests then? Mr. Murdoch continued, well, miss, from the information I could gather, Francisco became ill and requested to leave the island. Diamante had an altercation with one of the staff members and VIP guests and assaulted them. So he was removed by security and transported back to the mainland to be apprehended by proper law enforcement. Eldrick, as well, had a illegal issue on the island earlier in the day when he was realized he smuggled a weapon on the island and then became erratic under the influence of drugs and began randomly shooting in the air. Renting, he was the winner of $10,000 after finding the clue in Lucilia's gold shoe. Katana said, wow, so those were the gunshots that we heard earlier, guys. The group shook their head and sighed. Mr. Murdoch said, well, nevertheless, he had to be escorted off the island as well. And as for Champagne, as you all may already be aware, she excused herself at dinner to go to the restroom. Then she was found to be trying to make a call on her cell phone. From what Mr. McDowell told me, the young lady contacted her wealthy upper-class family and demanded them to come and get her because she was ready to leave the island. So Mr. McDowell gave Champagne's father the directions as to where to pick her up. Champagne was then transported by our captain to your original boarding port on the mainland in Africa, and Champagne left in the care of her parents, whom recovered her on their very own yacht. Militia said, no, there's no way she would have left us without saying goodbye. Mr. Murdoch replied, Well, she did, madam. Did you not yet find her note, Chuyu and Lucilia, about her departure? Lucilia and Militia looked at one another and replied, no. Well then, Mr. Murdoch concluded by saying, hopefully this doesn't ruin your fun on Fancy Feast Island. Please feel free to contact us if you have any further concerns. Dr. Sapphire added, if that's all, we bid you all a good night. The group was drained for the night, and everyone just went to bed. Surely, indeed, Lucilia and Milicia found their farewell letter from Champagne in their rooms. Everyone was beginning to feel uneasy about this island. People just kept mysteriously disappearing. But the explanations seemed to be adequate enough. Everybody just tried their best to get a good night's sleep and start fresh. The group actually had a lovely day. After such stressful situations that occurred, the guests decided to go for yoga and meditation sessions together, which calmed their nerves quite a bit. They also visited the Zen garden, gift shop, and lounged at the swimming pool, enjoyed a delicious lunch at the cafe, and caught a movie at the cinema's theater, as well as had a few cocktails at the bar before dinner. Many of the island guests were getting a lot better acquainted, as Jakota and Eureka, Just Me and Elena, Starkton and Connor, Sebastian and Shira, Shalam and Annabella, Lacey and Graceland, Katana and Lucilia, all seemed to be coupled up and getting along very well. But of course, a lustful scandal was lingering on the island as well, because what Elenia was unaware of is that Milicia whom was transgender, yet still had her penis, was in a hot and heavy love triangle with Just Me, whom allegedly was supposed to be a straight man. Obviously not. Day 4 through day 8. The guest islanders were having the time of their lives. So pleased that no other incidents had happened thus far, the group savored every moment they spent in paradise. Although the group didn't really care for the creepy mandatory dinner accommodations, they all put on a brave face each night and acted as if they were appreciative. However, eager to leave as soon as possible after each meal, something Mr. Rothberg's family noticed and grew increasingly agitated with. With their thirst for more blood and desire for more human flesh, something was bound to happen soon enough, unbeknownst to the unsuspecting guest islanders. Throughout the days to pass, the group attended 3 more concerts, which included more artists who were flown in for one day to entertain them. On the 4th day, the guests attended a concert starring famous notorious rappers Trill Mongolians and a comedy show headlining the astonishingly funny Tak Willison, whom is the rawest and realest in his craft. On day 6, the guests were graced with the presence of yet another pop singer, Ty Fast, whom was stylishly fierce in her performance. Another A-list celebrity rocked the stage. She was followed by yet another great magician, Next and Layers, whom shocked the crowd time and time again. Day 8. Concerts was a huge blowout performance, as it was the last scheduled concert for the Islanders. Rapper Lil Da Infant had the guests hyped and totally turned up to the max, and the night wouldn't have been complete without the non-stop hilarious laughs by Nivek Arts, whom is an American comedian ranked #1 in his league. Day 9. With only 5 days left on the island, several of the guests decided to take a more relaxing approach to their retreat. The viewership on the dark web had reached a peak of around 4 million. While the Rothbergs had allowed the guests to get comfortable without incident, the viewers took pleasure in seeing the sexual escapades of the islanders, which was nearing a very dramatic, scandalous combustion. However, the Rothbergs and VIP friends didn't disappoint the online viewing audience either. Between the daily dinners of cannibal culinary arts delights, the Rothbergs and VIPs enjoyed much more sinister pleasure, something in which they indulged in without the islanders' knowledge or presence. Yet they did allow the recording for live views to the web. Each night after midnight, the Rothbergs and VIP guests met in the basement of the mansion for a very special occasion. A satanic ritual was led by Father Evilizas, as was an animal and human sacrifice performed before an altar each night. Each attendant person's performed were draped in dark robes which were left open to expose their bare naked body of each in attendance. The demonically possessed group chanted as evil entities were called upon. A brass bowl was passed around the group containing the blood of a young child, to which everyone took a sip of perverse sin. After the sacrifice of the lamb, whose head was severed, Father Evilizas lifted a black curtain which covered 10 iron cages containing abducted children from various parts of the world. 5 children were stuffed naked in each of the cages, and yet again, on this special occasion, one of the children were chosen by the Rothbergs family and placed upon an altar. The child was force-fed the raw flesh of the lamb, and then assaulted and slaughtered to death by each coven member in attendance. The purposeful abomination in an effort to pay homage to their God. But this sinful night was a special one for the Rothbergs family. In continuance, a sexual incest ceremony was performed before the VIP guests. The Rothbergs children were groomed from birth to sexually gratify both their mother and father. But on this day, the Rothberg children alone, whom were all adults now, and had done so before throughout their lives, partook in a sex ritual altogether for the VIP guests' amusement. Of course, all persons were masked for the purposes of the live feed. However, the ranks shot to 6 million in no time at all, profiting $3.3 million thus far. Back on the island, the guests decided to go to the beach for a swim and a few cocktails. Everything was going great besides the obvious tensions between Elenia and Militia, as they both craved the attention of Jasmine, who was clearly leading them both on. That was until tragedy struck when Elenia went too far out in the water. The currents were swifter that day and seemingly floated Elenia out in the water further and further away. Elenia screamed for help as she began sinking underwater. Katana ran to get help, and a few of the guys tried to reach her, but Elenia just seemed to continue getting further away. It was no surprise that Militia just stood there watching with this evil smirk on her face. Finally, however, the lifeguard Timothy Dave arrived. He ran out to sea in an effort to save Elenia, but once he reached her, she had blacked out from shock. Tim swam with Elenia back to shore and carried her out of the ocean. Dr. Sapphire and Nurse Long had arrived as well to help save Elenia's life. CPR was done to get Elenia back breathing again, which she did after coughing up a lot of water. The lifeguard, doctor, and nurse took Elenia to the nurse's station and told the other guests they keep them posted about her condition. The group was in such a panic it kind of killed the vibes for the day. The group kind of split up for a while, with the guys hitting the gym and the ladies going to the sauna and steam room and spa. The men really just kind of wanted to burn off some steam, but it was the perfect opportunity for the women to talk. The topic of the conversation was how crazy things just kept happening on the island. Annabella, Lacey, and Eureka agreed that something wasn't right about this supposed paradise they were on, and they were going to find out what was going on. Katana intervened, saying she didn't think it was a good idea for the women to go snooping around. Lucilia agreed, and Miss Attitude Militia just rolled her eyes. Just then, there was a speaker announcement calling all the guest islanders to the patio. Kinda appalled at this feature as it hadn't been used before, Graceland said to everyone, all of a sudden, "You don't think they heard us talking, do you?" The group looked worried as they peered at each other, but replied they really didn't know. Nevertheless, all the guests reported to the patio as requested. Mr. Murdoch was waiting for the group to report to everyone the update about Elenia's condition, which wasn't good because Mr. Murdoch claimed Elenia succumbed to her accident and did not make it. Jasmine was upset and shouted, "How could that be? She was breathing just fine before you all took her to the nurse's station." Mr. Murdoch replied, "Yes, sir, but it seems there was some damage to her lungs, as I was told by Dr. Sapphire." Annabella, Lacey, and Eureka looked at each other, worried. "See, I told you, something isn't right about this island," Annabella said. The guests really didn't feel like attending dinner after such sad news, but as always, they readied themselves for the evening and attended the dinner anyway. Melissa thought it was her chance to get closer to just me, however, but quickly an argument arose between them. "What the hell is your problem? What's wrong with you?" Jasmine yelled. "A woman just fucking died, and you all too eager for her to be gone so you can be up all over me." Militia shouted back, "Well, it sure as hell hasn't been a problem before. How about you tell everyone how you prefer my dick over a woman anyway?" Militia added, as she stormed off from the table. "I don't know what she's talking about," Jasmine explained nervously and anxiously to everyone at dinner. The Rothbergs, however, found the matter rather humorous, as did the VIP guests. Embarrassed, Jasmine excused himself as well. "You stay the hell away from me," he shouted, enraged at Militia, as he passed her in the hallway. The dramatization of it all and Elenia's death kind of spoiled dinner, so the guest islanders left as well. But there was an evil presence lurking in the air on the island. Annabella, Lacey, and Eureka was up to something, and they were being very secretive about it. Jasmine was furious with Militia and was bound to snap any moment. The rest of the guests was just glad to call it a night. Around midnight, everyone had gone to bed except a few of the guests. Jasmine was still very much angry that he had been embarrassed at dinner, so he sat in the bar drinking shot after shot of Hennessy. Annabella, Lacey, and Eureka set out on the patio, striking up a plan to find out what the hell was being hidden from them. The ladies decided that they were going to sneak to the mansion when they thought everyone was asleep and look around. Jasmine asked the bartender for a bottle to go to his room with. Already wasted, he stumbled back to his suite in a drunken fit of rage. Jasmine then entered Militia's room while she was sleeping and beat her to death with the bottle of Hennessy. Blood splattered everywhere, all over Jasmine, the floor, the walls, the ceiling, and all. Jasmine didn't even bother to try to clean himself up or clean up the scene of the crime. He just stumbled back to his suite and passed out drunk on his bed while still covered in blood. The trio, however, set up planning until about 1:30 a.m. on day 10, when they thought all the other guests, staff, and the Rothbergs and VIPs were asleep. They quietly crept across the island and to the mansion. The three women walked around each side of the mansion, peering through the windows they could reach, when suddenly they seen a weird flashing lights coming from a crack in the basement window of the mansion. They got closer and could hear faint screams coming from inside. The ladies began to crawl on the ground to get a closer view as to what was going on. They couldn't believe their eyes when they saw the Rothbergs and the VIP guests finally unmasked, as they thought they were alone. Lacey let out a loud sigh as she recognized several people who were performing some type of sick ritual in dark robes and naked underneath. Annabella said, "Oh my gosh, that's Elenia on some kind of altar, and she's alive." But just then, Lacey said, "Girl, do you see this? That's the president, the Pope, and several other politicians holding some kind of dagger-looking knife thing." Eureka and the other two women tried to refrain from screaming as they watched in horror Elena being killed in cold blood. It wasn't until Eureka seen old Patrick Winhart snatch a big black curtain off a cage full of children, grabbed one of them, and force-fed the child parts of Elena's body, as they also took turns taking bites of Elena's heart as well. Eureka screamed, "No!" as Lacey and Annabella hurried to grab her mouth to hush her up, but their cover was blown. The sinister group inside heard them outside of the window. Mr. Rothberg, angry, ordered his security, "Capture them now!" The three women ran for their lives to warn the others, but the guards were much too fast, as if they were superhuman or something. The three women were caught and dragged by their hair to the dungeon of the mansion, kicking and screaming all along the way. Once inside, the three women were hog-tied, which was connected to a chain that lifted them up, suspending them dangling in midair. The Rothbergs and their guest VIPs masked themselves again before entering the dungeon, so the torture of the three women could be streamed live to the dark web. The evil coven circled the women while reciting a satanic chant over and over again as the women squirmed and jerked about. Mrs. Rothberg caressed one of the women's breasts as she whispered, "You broke the island's rules, my dear, and now you must suffer the consequence." Gisela and Edith Rothberg joined their mother in stripping the women naked. Elmarker Rothberg approached Annabella and shouted, "An eye for an eye, my pretty." You were eager to see what was sacred and forbidden. Now your eyes shall be ours for the taking, she continued, as she took an ice pick and gouged one of Annabella's eyes out. Then each of the coven women in attendance took turns in removing the eyeballs of each of the three women from the island. Then 6 of the VIP guests cut off the breasts of each woman, in which they took turns feasting on, as the coven danced naked under the dangling women who were bleeding to death. Drenched in the blood of their victims, the coven partook in a sexual ritual. The women were lowered onto a table, and each of the coven men took turns raping them, as the coven women brutally butchered them and severed off each of their heads. The dark web freaks found this event to be intriguing because the viewers were now at 6.9 million and counting. 3:30 a.m. and the ritual was complete. Soon it would be time to handle yet another gruesome matter. 6 a.m. day 10. The island guests were still fast asleep, but would soon awaken to a horrific crime scene: the brutal murder of their fellow islander Melissa. 8 a.m. Finally, the islander guest was up and about, getting themselves ready for the day. The men dressed first and was sitting at the juice bar waiting on the ladies to join them for breakfast. However, when the women arrived is when Shira noticed Melissa and Jasmine wasn't amongst the group. Sebastian made the comment that maybe Jasmine and Melissa made up and spent the night together. Lucilia added she doubted, but nevertheless, the group went to the cafe for breakfast anyway. However, when the group was done eating and realized neither Jasmine or Melissa joined them, they all went to see what was going on. Shalem found Jasmine and his suite covered in dried blood that was all over him, pacing back and forth across the floor, and chain-smoking cigarettes. Shalem yelled for the others to come into the suite, and everyone was in shock at the sight of Jasmine. Connor shouted, "What in the bloody hell happened here?" Jasmine refused to speak. The women anxiously ran out of the room and to Melissa's suite. Their screams rang out through the island as the ladies broke down crying. "Oh my God!" Starkton yelled aloud as he ran his hands through his hair. "The bastard killed her," Jakota said. "Somebody call for help," Katana shouted in anger. Connor ran to the phone that was covered in blood and called guest relations specialist Mr. Murdoch. The Dr. Sapphire, Nurse Long, the maids Sarah and Jill, and the security guards hurried to the guest suites. Mr. Murdoch tried to calm the guests down as the doctor and nurse pronounced Militia officially dead. Security took Jasmine away, delivered him to the Rothberg's mansion, yet oddly he was never seen or heard from by the island guests again. Before now, the guests didn't notice that Eureka, Annabella, and Lacey were missing too. But they were nowhere to be found, and there was no gruesome scene in their rooms either. Mr. Murdoch assured the guests that he would look into the matter and get back to them as soon as possible. But by now, the guest wasn't having fun anymore and was ready to get the hell off this island. They made a pact to all stay together from now on. And the rest of the day, the group was in this depressive slumber. The guests had no appetite at all, but they wanted answers from the Rothbergs. So the group went to their scheduled dinner, which was mysteriously creepy as always. The chefs never seemed to disappoint as yet another elegant feast was served. Crown roast of human pork with mushroom dressing, bacon wrapped pesto, human thigh tenderloin, human breast with apricot chutney, 3 berry bloody salsa, slow simmered burgundy stew, stuffed clams, green bean, fig and feta salad, Hasselback potatoes, grilled eggplant with black bean vinaigrette, red cabbage, croissants, French apple cake, death by chocolate dessert. Although wowed by another fancy meal that looked fabulous, the guest was much more interested in knowing what happened to Jasmine and the missing islanders. So Stockton ended the awkward silence by being the first to inquire about the obvious. Mr. Rothberg responded, "Well, young man, as you know, Jasmine murdered Militia due to their lover's quarrel. Thus, he was detained by the island security and transported back to the mainland to be arrested by proper authorities." Shower interrupted the conversation, saying, "So, where is Lacey, Annabella, and Eureka then?" Mr. Rothberg replied, "Well, hon, it seems Jasmine killed them too, for catching him in the act of murdering Militia." The guest islanders looked at each other confused. He confessed to disposing of their bodies. He confessed to disposing of their bodies in the ocean, Mr. Rothberg stated. The group found this explanation hard to believe, because why didn't he put Militia's body in the ocean like he did the others, if that's the case? Not to mention, the guests never seen any of the boats or yachts on the island leave at any time. Something wasn't right, and the group knew it. The Rothbergs were hiding something and lying to them. Sebastian then noticed Jasmine's bag sitting in the corner by a china cabinet. So he asked, "Isn't that Jasmine's bag?" Becoming very angry, Mr. Rothberg slammed his fist on the table and shouted, "He left it behind, young man." Mrs. Rothberg intervened and asked the group, "Why, don't you trust us?" Shalane stood up and said, "To be quite frank, hell no. And I'm done with this," he continued in saying. "I think I can speak for the group as well as myself when I say we are ready to leave this goddamn island now." Tempers were flaring at this point, so Mr. Murdoch, the butler, Mr. McDowell, and security stepped forward and approached Shalane. "Please sit down, young man," Mr. McDowell kindly ordered. Mr. Apollio Rothberg said to the group of them that leaving the island wasn't an option. Graceland stepped in, asking why in the hell not. Mr. Apollio replied, because, hon, your retreat isn't yet complete. Connor stood and told the group, come on, man, let's get the fuck out of here. Mr. Rothberg signaled the staff to escort the group out. Once the guests were gone, Mr. Jean-Rob Lech looked at General Amos Connor, both of which, whom were VIP guests, said, the hunt is on. Still standing on the front stairs of the mansion, the islanders heard the faint cheers coming from inside. The Rothbergs and the VIP guests were in celebration to hunt down the remaining guests. Katana said, these motherfuckers are crazy. Come on, guys, let's get the hell out of here. As the group walked away, they noticed one of the servants standing in the window watching them. Connor said, hey, did y'all see that? And when the group of them all looked back, the servant, Leilona, put one finger to her mouth and signaled them to shh, as she pointed to the butcher shop. The group didn't know what she meant, so they quietly crept alongside of the mansion and peered through the window of the butcher shop. They could not believe their eyes as they stood in shock, looking at the severed heads of all the missing guest islanders. Lucilia ran away as fast as she could to her suite. Starkton threw up instantly at the gruesome sight. The others watched in fear as the butcher mutilated Jasmine's body, skinning him and chopping up pieces of his body and removing his organs as well. Shara mumbled, oh my God, fancy feast. Jakota said, is that what we were eating all along? And he too vomited all over himself. Graceland said to everyone, come on, we gotta figure out a way to get off this island, guys. The group made it back to their suite without incident. They all began to pack their things as fast as they could, and they gathered together on the patio. Sebastian said, how are we going to get out of here when we are surrounded by water? Katana suggested taking one of the boats, but the guests had no idea where the keys were. Maybe the keys are in one of the boats, Shira suggested. We have to try and see. Okay, Jakota said. I will go and check, and you all sit here and act like nothing has happened in case they're watching us. Starkton shouted, I'm coming with you. The other guests acted like things were as normal as possible as they took some shots and continued to talk. Unfortunately, the islanders were still unaware they were being surveilled, so the Rothbergs knew of their every move as well as they could hear their every conversation. All the men put on full body hunting gear and went out onto the island to hide amongst the darkness that lingered about all around them. Jakota and Starkton successfully made it to the boating dock. There were several different boats, sailboats, and a number of yachts which belonged to Mr. Rothberg and his VIP guests. Starkton suggested checking the sailboats first, as they were easier to check quickly because they were smaller. There was only 3 sailboats on the island, and one by one, Jakota and Starkton checked each one. The first 2 of the sailboats, the pair of the men found nothing of use for a weapon or any keys. Hoping for the best, they checked the 3rd sailboat and luckily found 2 flare guns, and the keys to the boat were in the ignition. However, the men couldn't get the keys out of the ignition as they were stuck. Suddenly, the man heard a whining noise. They anxiously looked around and balled up in the corner of the sailboat. In a fetal position, they seen Lucilia hiding when she took off running earlier from the butcher shop. She must have hid there all along. Jacoda told Stockton, "We gotta go and get the others so we can hurry and get out of here." Stockton agreed and told Lucilia just to wait there for them until they returned. But as soon as Jacoda stepped off the boat and onto the dock, a single arrow flew directly toward him, puncturing him in the face right between the eyes. Stockton screamed for help as he ran back towards the beachfront with the other guests. He fired every round in both flare guns into the air. But like a beastly bear protecting his cubs, Noriko Robinson jumped out of nowhere and plunged upon the back of Stockton like live prey, ripping him to shreds, limb by limb. Noriko bashed Stockton's skull in, as well as sank his teeth into the flesh of his face. Noriko, wide-eyed, with blood dripping from his mouth, dragged Stockton's lifeless body back to the mansion. The butcher was sent to recover the body of Jacoda, to preserve his organs. The butcher did as ordered, took his huge fish hook, drilled it through the skull of Jacoda, and dragged him to the butcher shop. The other guests, sitting in wait for the two men to return, grew scared as they heard the distant screams echo through the whistling wind. Graceland said, "Something must have happened to them. We need to hide," she continued. Katana said, "But where? They could probably find us anyway." Shira said, "Well, let's go to the cafe and try to find some weapons and then go and hide in the theater until morning." So Connor, Sebastian, Shalane, Graceland, Shira, and Katana did just that. Along the way, Connor asked, "Where is Lucilia?" Graceland said, "Maybe she's already hiding out somewhere. I don't know, but we gotta go." The group finally snuck their way to the cafe and grabbed as many knives as they could find. Sebastian opened the refrigerator and found different human organs chilling on ice. The guests instantly grew sick to their stomach, and it has dawned on them yet again that they were being fed human remains the entire trip. Safely hid away in the theater, the group huddled up together, unable to sleep but waiting to protect themselves at any moment if need be. Day 11. Whether the guests wanted to or not, eventually they did doze off to sleep, but the group was startled awake at the sound of a clicking noise. Lucilia stayed hidden and didn't move a muscle. The others, however, contemplated whether they should risk leaving their hiding spot. The Rothbergs family and others knew exactly where every one of the islanders were hidden. There was no place on the island that wasn't surveillance after all. Mr. Rothberg knew without a doubt that their guest wasn't going to join them for dinner that night or any other, as well as he was sure they wouldn't return to the mansion on their own. So, for the last few remaining days left of this event, the VIPs made plans to hunt their helpless prey down. Furthermore, Lucilia Walker had spent days trying to figure out the riddles from the game that all of the other guest islanders seemingly forgot about or really didn't care about. She finally realized it wasn't about which of them would win the game by competing with one another. It was to figure out whom of all of them were chosen by the Rothberg's family to win the grand prize. You see, you don't choose them, but they choose you. In the end, what you decide to do is left up to you. Yes, the clue was in the sole of Lucilia's golden shoe, but it didn't belong to any other but her, which means she was the one whom was chose because of her familiar soul. Lucilia knew this, and that's why when she ran last night, it was to go and fetch her some snacks to store away while she hid out into the end of the deadly game. The rest of the guests knew their lives were in danger, but they decided to make a run for it to the snack bar to find some real food actually edible. Along the way, the guests ducked and dodged every passing staff member of the island. But no matter their efforts, once they made it to the snack bar and began gulping down water, juice, chips, and any other packaged snack food they could find, they were abruptly approached by the waitstaff, whom had this eerily looking duper polite smile on their face. "Can we help you?" Samson asked. Connor snapped back, "Yeah, you can help us get the hell off this island." Lenona laughed hysterically. "You know very well we can't at all do that, sir. How about you all relax by the beachfront and we'll bring you all smoothies?" "No thanks," Sebastian shouted. "We've had just about enough of you people's kind of hospitality." "Let's go," Shira suggested to the group as they took off running as fast as they could to their suites. "Suit yourself," Samson said as he and Lenona giggled to themselves. Back at the patio, Connor asked the group, did any of them think that they could swim to safety? Shallam said that would be a very long swim, man. And you remember what happened to Elenia? Shira interrupted and yelled, "Well, it's our best bet, and I'm not about to sit around here and wait to be slaughtered." "Neither am I," Connor said. The group sat in utter shock and endless fear as both Shira and Connor decided that they were going to make their escape by trying to swim to the nearest piece of land smack dead in the middle of the ocean and nowhere. The Rothbergs and guests sat in the library, watching and listening to every detailed plan of the islanders. Mr. Rothberg ordered the lifeguard Tim and his sons Akwolf and Amir to suit up, as they were avid scuba divers, to catch their little runaway fish in action. Apollio had the production team and camera crew to equip their diving suits with surveillance cameras as well. Connor and Shira said their goodbyes to the rest of the group and set out to sea at noon. As they swam as fast as they could away from the island. Once far enough away, Connor and Shira paused for a break. As they looked around, they were smack dead in the middle of the ocean and didn't have a clue on which way to go. Suddenly, Connor felt a tug on his foot. He thought surely it was a shark or something. He frantically spun around in the water. Shira yelled at Connor, "Come on, swim! Just keep swimming, Connor!" Which he did, but something sliced his leg, which Connor thought was a bite by a vicious animal. Blood began to fill the water all around Connor, and before he knew it, Connor was jerked underwater. Connor soon realized he was being attacked by men, not a shark. He struggled to fight his opponents back, and with every breath of fresh air he got, he yelled for Shira to go as fast as she could. Connor was stabbed repeatedly until there was no more fight left in him. Then his lifeless body sank. Shira was struck with complete terror as she witnessed the horrific death of Connor. Scared to death, she continued to swim, still thinking a monstrous sea animal was on the loose and just had eaten her friend alive. It wasn't long before Shira was under attack herself, kicking and screaming, fighting back against her attackers, whom she finally realized wasn't an animal at all, but 3 men in scuba gear determined to take her life. One of the men gutted Shira in the stomach, while another strangled her underwater. Before long, Shira had no fight left in her either. But back on the island, the 4 remaining guests huddled together in one suite. Locking the door behind them, they decided to document what had happened to them on the island using their phones, which had no cellular service or Wi-Fi, but they could still use the camera to record. Sebastian and Shalem searched the room from top to bottom and found the hidden cameras. The guys covered the cameras long enough to hide the phones under the mattress of the bed, with the hopes of any future guests finding the phones, which had a note attached and the phone charger telling the guests to check the camera's saved recordings. The foursome barricaded themselves in the suite, ate a few of the snacks that they had stashed away, and took some shots of liquor as they waited. A voice over the loudspeaker said, come out, wherever you are. We know you're in there." The group anxiously sat in fear as they comforted one another. The Rothbergs, however, proceeded with their prearranged dinner plans to cure their cannibalistic taste buds, as well as they partook in their nightly ritualistic practices. But something strange happened when around 11 p.m., all of the power was turned off by the Rothbergs, and the island guests were stuck and stranded on a dark island. Sebastian, Shalem, Gracelyn, and Katana decided to stay in their suite if possible until morning. But their snacks were running out, and soon enough the group would have to try to find more food to eat before they starved to death. Lucilia was yet and still tucked away in the sailboat, able to get away if she really desired to, but not once did she even try to do so. She stayed hidden away from the others and periodically ate her snacks and drank her bottles of water as well. Day 12, 6 a.m. Sebastian, feeling it was safe enough to run to the cafe and snack bar for more food, decided the earlier they get this done, then they would be able to hide out for the rest of the day. Shalem helped Sebastian unbarricade the door so that he could exit, but as planned, Shalem would stay with the women because if anything happened, he could at least try to protect them. Sebastian took one of the ladies' duffel bags to store food in, and he sprinted as fast as he could to the cafe and snack bar. Ironically, not one person was in sight. The island was creepily silent. Sebastian grabbed as much as he could to fill the bag. Juices, waters, fruits, granola bars, chips, cookies, muffins, cereal, etc. Anything and everything he could grab in a hurry. After getting all he could possibly stuff in the duffel bag, Sebastian jogged back to the suite without incident. Rushing inside the door, the men hurried to barricade the door again. Sebastian told the group no one was around at all, and the island was completely silent. Katana said, "So do you think now we can run to one of the boats and try to sail away?" Shalem butted in, saying he didn't know about that, because surely there was somewhere watching them. Sebastian agreed. Graceland replied, "Yeah, let's just wait it out. Maybe they'll just let us leave if we stay until the end of the retreat, right?" Katana said sarcastically, "I doubt that very seriously." Little did the guests know, all of the bottled waters and juices were injected with liquid poison to drug them. The Rothbergs and guests sat and waited patiently as they watched the guests eat and drink the bottles of water of poison. It wasn't long before the guests started feeling ill, and they knew something was wrong. Drowsiness fell over them quickly, and Sebastian was the first to warn the others that they had been drugged. All of a sudden, each of the guests blacked out and slumped over on the floor beside one another. Unfortunately, the unsuspecting islanders fell right into the trap of their captors. The guests were knocked out unconscious, but were still alive. Akwolf and his brother Amir cheered, excited for the fun to begin again. Mr. Rothberg ordered the security guard, General Khan, Mr. Ledge, and Mr. Lucas to go and recover their victims. The Rothberg family and VIP guests eagerly waited in anticipation for the upcoming ceremony to begin. The next 2 days of the event was bound to be festive and astonishingly eventful. Once the men returned to the mansion with each of the guests, they were bound and gagged, then left in the study for the time being. The servants worked endlessly to prepare the ballroom and dining room for the evening celebration. The mansion chefs even prepared a very special meal for dinner. All of the guests, as well as the family, readied themselves for the reception party. The waitstaff dressed the table with candlelight and fine china. Each slaughtered island guest's severed head was placed on a stainless steel platter covered with fruits, berries, and garnish, and sat upon the dining table as a centerpiece. Chilled bottles of wine and appetizers were added as well for the Rothberg family and their guests' enjoyment. Mr. Murdoch and Mr. McDowell were given the task to clean and regest the male island passages, as well as Miss Num, Miss Sarah, and Miss Jill were given the same task for the women. Once the servants were finished getting the island guests ready, they were relocated to the dining room, where they were once again bound and tied to their chair. Sebastian, Shalem, Katana, and Graceland were slowly awakening. Surely to be surprised, they were sitting in front of all of their other island friends once they are fully conscious again. 5 p.m. Everyone gathered in the dining room for pre-dinner refreshments, which included wine and gourmet appetizers. All those in attendance flocked in excitement at the presence of the semi-inebriated guest islanders, teasing and taunting them as they passed by. The Rothbergs and VIPs continued to socialize until the evening dinner was served at 6 p.m. Meanwhile, back on the island, Lucilia was left alone. She fearfully watched as the remaining guests were taken away. Finally, she decided not to hide anymore. Lucilia went to her suite, showered, and changed into her evening gown that she was saving for a very special occasion, and slipped on her sparkly golden heels. Lucilia did her hair and makeup in her dimly lit room, then prepared herself to face her fears and stand before the Rothbergs yet again, as she had been chosen by them. As always, dinner started promptly at 6 p.m. At least the drowsy dwindlers were now wide awake, eyes bucked wide open at the sight of their fellow islanders, buddies, heads on a platter. Lovely of you to have joined us, Mr. Rothberg said to his guests. The four squirmed in their chairs, trying to free themselves from bondage, when Graceland yelled as loud as she could, "Please, let us go!" Mr. Rothberg spake up, saying, "But you haven't eaten your dinner yet, dear." Just then, the waitress and maids began delivering the dinner to the table. Sebastian finally had the strength to utter a few words. "You people are sick." The crowd laughed in amusement to his comment. Then Aqua said, "You have no idea," as he continued laughing hysterically. Father Eviliza stood before the group and recited a satanic prayer over the food, after which Apollio encouraged the guest islanders to eat up as it was their last supper. Shallam shouted, "Hell no, you disgusting pig," which pissed Apollio off profusely. "How dare you disregard our generous hospitality with rude disrespect after you were rewarded a free trip to paradise," said Apollio. Enraged, Apollio stood up from his seat and stormed across the dining room to Shallam, grabbed him by the hair, and said, "You will eat," as he shoved roasted human liver and rice down the throat of Shallam. "You enjoyed every meal just fine until you knew what you were eating. Now you're too good for our food, huh?" Apollio continued shouting while force-feeding Shallam until he choked on his own vomit. "Who's the pig now?" Apollio said. Apollio then grabbed a carving knife and slit Shallam's throat from ear to ear. The Rothbergs family and VIP guests stared anxiously, as if watching live entertainment. Apollio returned to his seat calmly and finished his meal without saying another word. The Cannibal Club was aroused by the sight of fresh blood spilling about the table. So much so, the group was eager to get the other festivities on for the evening. Sebastian, Katana, and Graceland was beyond scared at this point. They sat in silence, weeping and fearful that they would be killed next. The maids were directed to feed each of the remaining guests, whom sat in shock, shaking all over. After dinner was complete, the three remaining guests were taken to the ballroom, where they were latched onto a hook that was attached to a rope dangling from the ceiling. The three guests were then risen up in the air, hanging from the harness that they were attached to. The masked VIPs stripped their victims of all their clothing, and there they stayed naked and afraid while a satanic ritual was performed. After which time, the use of drugs and the consumption of fresh blood was indulged in by all persons in attendance, as a grand orgy and sex ritual ensued. Under heavy influence, the host became very hostile in nature, taking turns torturing each victim with various different objects, instruments, and deadly weapons. Sebastian, Katana, and Graceland were grossly brutalized, tortured, and terrorized to death. Each of them were beaten, raped, sodomized, mutilated, and violated with foreign objects. When each victim was pronounced dead, they were then released from their bondages as their limp bodies fell to the floor. They were decapitated, as the Rothbergs kept the heads of their victims and had them preserved, stuffed, and mounted on the walls like deer. Many of the VIPs had sex with the severed heads of the victims, as well as the headless corpse, too. Just as all the victims' feet were cut off and removed for Aqua Rothberg's growing collection of feet to satisfy his lustful foot fetish fascination. Midnight, day 13. The doorbell rang at the Rothbergs' mansion, a feature that was almost never used, but the Rothbergs family and their guests knew this was the ring of a very special chosen guest. So, Mr. Rothberg ordered Mr. Murdoch to answer the door promptly at once and have the escort Jessica to show their visitor to their most luxurious guest room and have the maids to provide her with anything she desired. The door swung open. "Lucilia, my dear, we have been expecting you. Please come in," Mr. Murdoch said, cheerfully with a smile. The Rothbergs family are preoccupied at the moment, but Jessica will show you to our finest guest room to wait. We have also been instructed to provide you with anything you desire, so please feel free to call upon the maid service for whatever you'd like. Lucilia stood there, looking amazingly radiant and beautiful in her golden sequins gown and glittery, sparkling golden stiletto heels. Her hair was in an elegant French roll with two curly strands of hair loosely dangling from both sides. Lucilia thanked Mr. Murdoch for his generosity as she followed the lead escort, Jessica, to the guest room as requested. Lucilia was delivered to the most luxurious guest room indeed, and which was very fancifully designed by Mrs. Rothberg, whom decorated everything inside. Upon her arrival, the maid service was waiting to assist her with any requested accommodations she may have. Maid Jill asked Lucilia if she would like anything to drink while she waited. Lucilia spun around in excitement with a warm, inviting smile and politely said, "Yes, a Bloody Mary, please. Thank you." Jill replied, "Yes, ma'am," right away. Then Maid Sarah handed Lucilia an appetizer and dessert menu and asked if she would like a snack as well. Lucilia very anxiously replied, after skimming through the menu, "I'll have the deviled food cake. Thank you." Maid Sarah grinned and said, "Very well, madam. I shall return promptly." Lucilia made herself comfortable, sat at the vanity, and refreshed her makeup while she waited on her refreshments. Meanwhile, in the ballroom, the Rothbergs family and their guests wrapped up their evening engagements, then retreated to their rooms to clean up for yet another very special occasion. The mansion staff had their work cut out for them as well, seeing as they had to clean everything up and prepare for the upcoming celebration. The butcher removed the bodies of Sebastian, Katana, and Graceland, cleaned their corpse, removed their organs to be preserved, and prepared for the next scheduled dinner, which were then transported to the kitchen for the chefs. As well did the butcher dismember the bodies to be skinned, chopped, and filleted for certain portions of meat. The butler, Mr. McDowell, was the foreseer over all matters being handled promptly and accurately. However, with this being the last day for this month's event, Mr. Murdoch was already busy making preparations for the next scheduled event in July. With half the states already chosen for the first event, it was already decided which states our lucky guests would come from next: Idaho, Montana, Utah, Kansas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Alabama, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia, Alaska, and South Carolina. Nevertheless, not one person on the island got a bit of rest because it was a very special day for our chosen guests of honor. Therefore, a very strict schedule had to be followed in which an itinerary had already been prepared for the lucky winner of the $10,000 prize, which read as follows. Number 1, isolation contemplation. Number 2, breakfast fast. Number 3, brunch benefit. Number 4, lunch lush lunch. Number 5, happy cocktail hour reception. Number 6, decision dinner invitation. Number 7, final destination pledge. Number 8, satanic ritual sealed fate. Number 9, indoctrination initiation ceremony. The maids returned with Lucilia's refreshments and itinerary for the day. Sarah explained to Lucilia the schedule must strictly be followed. Therefore, from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. is the isolation contemplation time for her, where she will be left alone. And from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. is the breakfast fast for her, which she cannot eat nor drink, during which time, per her itinerary as well. However, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. is the brunch benefit, and at which time is when Lucilia will meet with the family and the VIP guests for the first time for the day. Lucilia nodded her head in understanding of the conditions and thanked the maids for their help. Mr. Rothberg and family carried on casually throughout the day. As well did the VIP guests enjoy various luxurious activities on the island until the scheduled brunch benefit started. Each of the events were to take place and occur in several different areas on the island and at the Rothberg mansion. By 8 a.m., the servants had everything in order, as well as all the decorations and accommodations for each event celebration in place. 9 a.m. brunch benefit. Everyone reported to the Island Cafe for brunch and awaited their special guest's arrival. Lucilia was escorted to the brunch by Jessica Nam, and upon her entrance to the cafe, Mr. Rothberg stood and said, "Ah, our familiar soul chosen one has arrived at last." The Rothberg family and VIP guests stood and cheered. Lucilia was seated and Mr. Murdoch addressed the crowd. "Miss Lucilia Walker, as you may know, you are our chosen lucky winner of the $10,000 prize here on Fancy Feast Island." Mr. Murdoch then handed Lucilia the $10,000 in cash and reminded Lucilia that the $10,000 was hers to do with what she liked. Lucilia thanked the Rothberg's family for their generosity, and Mrs. Rothberg replied, "I told you she was a great pick, hon," to her husband, and then she addressed Lucilia by saying, "Our pleasure, dear," with a crooked smile. The brunch benefit was a success as everyone enjoyed fresh fruits, vegetables, pastries, and smoothies while socializing. 12 p.m. noon, lunch, lush lunch. The Rothberg's family, VIP guests, and the island winner Lucilia relocated to the island's lounge for lunch. The group enjoyed a light, savory, and luscious luncheon, which included salmon macaroni salad, deviled eggs, Thai sauteed flatbread, spinach dip in tortillas, cucumber sandwiches, cilantro, lime, and mango avocado salsa, blueberry cheesecake bites, and lemon water. When everyone was satisfied, the group was ready and all too eager to loosen up a bit before the evening engagement. 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Happy cocktail hour and reception. Everyone retreated to the beachfront and patio. A full-service bar and live DJ was provided. The Rothbergs and guests mixed and mingled, drank, and danced to their favorite jams, as well did some recreational extracurricular activities take place as well. Many of the guests took pleasure in smoking cigarettes, cigars, marijuana, and other drugs of their choice like cocaine, ecstasy, meth, etc. 6 p.m. Decision dinner invitation. The last supper of the event was to take place on Mr. Rothberg's $6 billion yacht. At last, this is the dinner in which the Islanders winner will decide to leave Fancy Feast Island with her $10,000 to free herself, or rather accept the invitation to stay. If Miss Lucilia Walker decides to leave, she will be told the challenge rules and risks and then thrown off the yacht to sea. However, if Lucilia decided to stay, a chain of scheduled events will proceed as planned. The highly intoxicated group boarded the Fancy Feast yacht. Dinner has already been prepared and each person in attendance was served. Mr. Rothberg stood before the crowd and proposed a toast to Lucilia Walker, the Fancy Feast Island winner. After which, Mr. Rothberg asked Lucilia if she had made up her mind and was ready to make a decision. Lucilia didn't hesitate in her response, but simply replied yes. The group was anxiously waiting as they sat in silence to hear Lucilia's final decision. Mrs. Rothberg inserted herself in the conversation by then asking Lucilia to please share her decision with them. Lucilia replied, "Well, Mrs. Rothberg, honestly, I've had a frightfully good time." The guest interrupted by laughing aloud. "So, I believe I will stay," Lucilia continued. "Wonderful idea," Mrs. Rothberg excitedly said. Everyone cheered and toasted their drinks yet again. As the yacht was then again docked, Mr. Murdoch told the group, "It is now time to proceed with the planned schedule thus forth." 9 p.m. The pledge, final destination. The cheerful group were escorted to the mansion, where they all gathered in the ballroom. The butler, Mr. McDowell, rang a loud bell throughout the mansion for all the servants to attend the meeting. Once every servant was present, Mr. Murdoch shared with the staff that Miss Lucilia Walker was no longer a guest, but would now be taking the pledge to make Fancy Feast Island her final destination and home. Miss Lucilia Walker was then instructed to place her left hand on a satanic Bible and raise her right hand. Father Evil is Us continued with the pledge proceedings. Father Evil is Us then told Lucilia to repeat after him. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Rothberg family and Fancy Feast Island against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully take this oath to worship Satan as my God, as well do I of sound mind, body, and soul, accept Fancy Feast Island, my final destination forevermore. Upon completion of Lucilia's pledge, she was further instructed to sign a contract that would seal her fate and bound her unto death. Then all the servants were dismissed. 10 p.m. Satanic Ritual. The Rothbergs family, VIP guests, and Lucilia stripped naked and placed on their robes, after which they all walked silently to the basement dungeon of the mansion. Father Evilizas led the group in a satanic prayer, following the group continuing in a low-tone demonic chant. Bishop Timothy Daniel Jackson then removed the sacrificial lamb from its cage and stood before Lucilia, handing her a dagger. You must now perform an animal sacrifice to pay homage to the God you now serve. Lucilia took the dagger and slit the throat of the lamb. Father Evilizas collected blood from the lamb in a golden cup that was then given to Lucilia and told to drink the blood of the lamb. Mr. Hilliard Clemens then removed a black drape from 10 cages which held helpless children and instructed Lucilia to pick one. A tear rolled down the face of Lucilia as she pointed at her desired pick. The poor child was then placed on an altar, and Lucilia was ordered to take the life of innocence. For the first time, Lucilia was frozen stiff in fear. She had no idea this was a part of her pledge or oath she took. Mr. Rothberg angrily raised his voice at Lucilia and yelled, "Take the life of innocence, or stand in the child's place and sacrifice your own life." Lucilia closed her eyes, clenched the dagger tightly, and stabbed the child repeatedly. Father Evilizas collected the blood of the young child and told Lucilia to drink the innocent blood of virgin temptation, and Lucilia did as she was told. The heart of the young child was cut out by Mr. Hilliard Clemens, whom told Lucilia, "Eat the heart to cleanse your lustful soul." In conclusion of the satanic ritual, Lucilia was told, "Now you must lay with man and woman the same." Lucilia was taken to a sacrificial bed in the dungeon, where she was forced to have sex with everyone in attendance while being recorded, both man and woman. Midnight. Initiation indoctrination ceremony. For the final event, the entire Cannibal Club group and Lucilia relocated yet again back to the grand ballroom, which had now been rearranged for the group's bestiality orgy initiation. The incestuous Rothberg family, the bloodthirsty Cannibal Club Coven, and Lucilia Walker came together yet again in a group orgy. As well did they participate in illicit sexual acts with various different animals while under the influence of lucid drugs. With the completion of all scheduled plans for the month of June and the dark web reality show views at 66 million, Fancy Feast Island event was a success, grossing $33.6 million. Lucilia adapted very well and went on to become Mrs. Rothberg's most trusted personal assistant and lover. All the VIPs bid the Rothbergs family farewell as they boarded their yachts or private planes to depart from the island, full and satisfied. Mr. Julian Murdoch was hard at work for July's event. Plans and preparations were being made to invite new guests and VIPs to the island resort yet again. All of the staff and servants performed their daily tasks to get ready for the next event. Spoiler alert. While cleaning the guest suites, maid Jill found the hidden phone with the recorded video alert for the next guest, and she left it there in hopes that the islanders find it and are able to free themselves. The end.